We are live. But how? Oh God, I'm getting feedback. Where the hell is it coming from? Fuck you. Okay. Now that I'm not getting feedback because I had an unexplained window popped up there. But at the end of the day, woke right. What is it? Should we use this term? How good is the utility? Let's start with you, Tachyon Blue. Your thoughts on woke right.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Techie on Blue. I was involved with Gamergate, so I'm familiar with, of course, the culture war that existed in the gaming industry from about a decade ago, and that included a lot of you know people who were pushing back against what was perceived as a moral panic by the far left, right? By uh, by social justice warriors, quote unquote, or the woke left, or whatever you want to call it. And before that, we had Jack Thompson, and we had the sort of, you wouldn't call it woke right, but you would call them like authoritarian like right, who wanted to impose like cultural values like about video games or sexual mores on society. And then those people died off and lost out in society and were replaced by the woke left. And now people are concerned that we're going to see something similar happen again, a similar sort of moral panic on the right. So I do share these
No,
concerns. I think that there's always going to be like a pendulum shift. That there's going to be people in society who have cultural values that are illiberal and are going to push for those values, and they're going to have power, more or less power at various points throughout history. And like right now in this moment, right now we're seeing the end of the woke era. Like the woke people are going away, and we don't know what's going to replace them. Is it going to be like a
to
normal?
be correct, they're at least hiding their power level, as the kids would say it. But go on.
Okay, well, I think it's been declining for a few years now, for
Yeah,
sure. I think that
people are
also
getting
too.
sick of it.
Yeah, but we saw with Facebook recently changing, for instance, as well. So yeah, I think it's a question of what happens next. Do we see some sort of
Mhm.
like stability where people with a live and let live attitude, which is like most people on Earth, hopefully, or at least in America, sort of step in and be like, hey, look, maybe we shouldn't have this, moral panic stuff happening. Let's all just try to get along. That group becomes dominant, or are we going to see the woke left replaced with something even worse? And some of the people involved on the far right are trying to do that right now in the gaming industry.
Yep. Knowing's half the battle. GI Joe propaganda lives long in me. But yeah, I have the same sort of thoughts. Yeah, yes, they're not a big thing. Give me a sec. Um, yeah, sorry. Someone knocked on my door. I don't know if anyone heard that, but yes. The thing I'm thinking, if someone sort of identified what the woke left did back when it was happening and tried to put a stop to it, or at least warn people of it, and because I don't think the woke right as it is really has much power in the world. They're starting to shift that way. I'm starting to see, but let's not get ahead of ourselves and think they're that big. But getting ahead of something, because I do believe there is a woke right, and a lot of it, if you get into the more political side of things, I wish I didn't get into politics, but I have a background of watching too much cringy people online and getting my experience that way and not through the book learning. Although I do have a bit of college and some experience with definitely some people you would call woke firsthand and sort of how to deal with them in a sensible way. I don't know if they're woke or not. I think it's a reductive term, but it's a useful term that has made its way. So it's here. I would say use it.
Yeah, so you said something interesting there. That's my position too, I think, more or less, that the woke right definitely exists. Like there are these people who do want to push this sort of thing, but at the moment they don't seem to have a lot of power. I think that what happened with the Goonergate situation is that they kind of came out a little too early, and they were thinking like, hey, look, we're gonna come in, we're gonna take over, it's gonna be our industry now, and they didn't really realize that, like, well, your side is like 12 people at most, at
Yeah.
least in terms of like major content creators. You don't like have any real support behind you, and 12 is probably
Yeah.
being generous. It's more like 4. Right?
I'm sure there's more. You're talking about in the culture war. In the political space, there's a ton more from what
Oh,
I've
sure.
seen.
Yeah. If we're talking about outside of the gaming industry, yeah, absolutely. We're talking about, yeah, no. I mean, I
And
think like anyone who, I mean, I don't know how, if you want to go in this direction, Vincent, but like I would consider, like, so what Lindsay says, James Lindsay, he's the one who he's the one who exposed, alongside a couple other people, the hoax a few years ago with you probably know more about this than I do, Vincent, but what was it
yeah, I
called?
have
The
videos queued up. Definitely something I looked into. The Grievance Studies Affair
Yes.
is a great sort of troll that exposed the sort of fraudulent and backwards, like they literally rewrote Mein Kampf and submitted it to one of these institutes that publish these academic papers, and that got published. It was a small one. It was a small one. And he did it again with the woke right, with the more post-liberal movement.
Hmm.
And just like with the woke left, I'm just going to go with the terminology, even if it's probably not the best. Who the hell knows? But at the end of the day, he did the same with another more right-leaning, because they're definitely making their way into academia, the woke right, from the more political side, because there's a whole bunch of sides to this particular matter here. You got the culture, you got academia, and you got the more political side. Let's not get too far off, but academic and the cultural side does seem to be what I'm going to focus on here, I hope.
So
But
I think what before we jump in, I pre-watched. Just a heads up, did you pre-watch, Vincent?
pre-watched the first video that I'm going to
Yeah,
be
the
using
Menace
to
Wave.
jumping off. Yes.
Okay.
Why the woke right is not a thing, because I spoon the sorry, anyone in the culture war has not addressed it, except for maybe Spoon, and his video was a joke. This one's the first one to really give me some insight to a reaction from the cultural space that I would rather be in.
Okay. I think this will be going to be an interesting one. The thing is, though, having pre-watched it, um, not to cuck the content, I just don't think Mentis Wave went in like very seriously, and this is sort of a problem I've had with like some of his other content that I've seen, which isn't much, but
Yeah, the
it seems to
power
be
of
very
memes.
shallow. It's a very shallow take. He just sort of like throws it out there, says like, "Here's my opinion," and like expects people to agree with him. And I think that that's more or less what we're going to have happened here. But I'm ready when you are. Let's do it.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
do
it
you
might
or
be
do
a
you want
little
to define
unfair.
woke left, or do you want to define like woke or woke right first?
I am going to get into. I have a comment that I want to sort of highlight. So let's get into it. He goes real early into it. It sort of plays into it also. So let's just go into it, and we'll see where we land up in it. So I am going to speed it up. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little ADHD, so speeding up seems to be the way that I want to go. Go with ultimate something. I don't know. That's what? Yeah, there you go. I'm skipping his fabulous ads to push his merch. Go support him if you think he's not a complete. I don't know. Let me not say anything about him mean. Okay. I like his content overall. Little bit superficial, but hell, that's how you get through to the normies sometimes.
Hey, internets. There's been a recent discussion going around the internet about the supposed woke right, or the claim that woke ideology is spreading and becoming popular within the right wing of political discourse and whatnot. In this video, I'm going to explain why the woke right isn't really a thing, at least not in the way those of us on the libertarian right define right.
Here's the first exact point that I want to go to, and maybe we're going to bounce. So, why the woke right is not a thing, at least not from the way those of us on the libertarian right defines right wing. Okay, I'll hear you out, blah, blah, blah. Usage seems like standpoint theory to me, which is a feminist theory. And it seems to be what is established at the start of the video. It's just a bad sign when you start saying from my perspective. And from my perspective, who's more of a, truth seeker. Okay. I want to know the truth, not from standpoint episcopal. I can't say that. So I say standpoint theory. So at the end of the day, it's just sent red flags in me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like if he wants to do it, an analysis of what wokeness is or something like that from the perspective of economic libertarianism, like he can do that. But like, I don't know how much like real value there is. Like this whole thing, this whole conversation is going to go with you and me probably, and anyone else who comes on, I assume, unless we get to get some interesting guests. It's going to be you and me basically taking like the normal, like they'd probably call it cucked position, but like the normal societal.
No, I have the
liberal
base
position.
centrist position,
Yeah,
base
and
liberal position.
it's him going to be saying
freedom.
wokeness bad, but then basically saying that we need to get rid of the Civil Rights Act, and he's going to be very interested in this topic. Very interested in this. I'm just curious why, because like
this is a common theme. They keep on pushing at the civil rights, not realizing if they didn't push that back then, we might not had equal rights for people if they didn't put it. Did it go too far? Yes. I generally believe some of those civil rights, like affirmative action, has gone too far. But saying
I agree with
just because it went too far, that's again, this is what we were talking about earlier, the pendulum swing. We don't want to go from the far left to the far right. And that seems perfectly fine in a lot of these dissident right or woke right people's opinions. But yeah, I didn't get a response from that comment. Such a surprise.
Wing. We tend to look at being right wing as being pro-individual, pro-free market, and also pro-time preferences, or an emphasis on the cultural values that have been proven to build society rather than consume or destroy society. So
they already preloaded, and the time preferences one was always something interesting. I understand it. Western values on a Western clock. And there's a lot of these ideas. I'm probably cucking myself ahead of time by bringing this out. That this time preference thing is sort of evolving as the internet age. People are more going online to work, and they have more time preference. So it's becoming.
What do you mean, like time preference?
The way I understand it. I really wish Dev would have took me up on the offer. Maybe he could have explained it so I'm not mischaracterizing it. But he's a big YouTuber who probably doesn't have time for this crap. But that's besides the point. The time preference is sort of like the Western work ethics, okay? And I shouldn't have gotten into that, but it will become, I think I know what they mean, but I can't be sure. You know what I mean? Let me just rewind.
Or an emphasis on the cultural values that have been proven to build society rather than consume or destroy society. So there's a very strong recognition within sort of libertarian right thinking that equality isn't really a thing. There are cultural values that are more sustainable than others, and there are individuals who do more to build society than other individuals. And that this obvious fact is often seen as something that is politically incorrect to say is one of the main problems within Western society in our modern times, that we aren't really willing to say things that are obviously true, just because it goes against care-harm morality. However, on the subject of
obviously true. Obviously. You see, I sort of got into rhetoric. I actually did good in my rhetoric class, even though college is cucked, right? So maybe I shouldn't bring up.
Well, this is also what this is. Yeah, this is what James Lindsay was basically saying, though, in his definition of it, which is that Like one of the issues, like he in his definition of wokeness, he gives out a number of different things. Like one of which is like the anti-free speech, pro-censorship aspect, but then other aspects of deviation from liberal democracy as well. And one of them is this um, abandonment of the truth, which
Yeah.
is which yes, of course, the left is doing that, and he's probably going to give
Yeah.
some examples of that over the course of this
Postmodernists.
video. Sure, yeah, they're going to abandon truth. You see it with like the Kyle Rittenhouse thing as well, right? Or Gamergate, right? They deliberately lie about groups of people because they want to silence them and suppress them, or because it doesn't fit an ideological narrative that they want to promote, right?
Yeah.
But then you, but then of course the Trump movement, like in order to support Trump, you either like have to be a fascist or you have to like lie about January 6th, like lie to yourself too.
Well,
And
there's
that's
a
like
lot of people say that a lot of people have a cognitive dissonance with that, and he does have plausible deniability out there.
Well, I wouldn't say
Plausible
that at all.
deniability.
I wouldn't say
I
that
think
at
he
all.
does. Okay.
In regards to what? In
You,
regards to what specifically, Vincent?
sorry, I don't know the exact details, but in certain details, he definitely could say that there was a couple of things I think is a little tough to swallow with the pen stuff. Some of the other stuff will distract people, though. People will shift the focus and not see. Why do you keep having to do this? I don't want to be get into politics, Tachyon.
Well, we can move off of it, but it is like a clear point. Like I'm sure I don't know what
I
Vincent
agree.
on this,
You have to
but
not care about certain truths
yes,
or just excuse them because the other side is bad. And the other side is bad. Just to let you know. That's my opinion, though. I understand tolerance, okay? This is the thing between me. I am against the woke movement. I'm against identity politics and power politics. It's not great to be against power politics because power politics is awesome. Obviously, since everyone seems to use it and it seems to have such good utility in the public until it doesn't. But let's continue.
Of wokeness itself. The main problem with this woke right narrative comes from a confusion, not so much what being right wing is, but more so from a confusion of what wokeness is. Because one lefty liberal complaint that I often see that I actually do understand.
See, it's about the lefty complaint, liberal lefty complaint. So much of this focus seems to be. Go on.
The whole conversation is going to be like this. It's just going to be.
It is up until a certain point.
Yeah.
Okay,
he has like a number of like problems with it too. Like one of which is that he like assumes that everybody disagrees with wokeness because of reasons that he does, which is like a really bizarre like view. Like obviously people are going to approach, like most people I would assume disagree with wokeness, like not because they like have like foundational arguments that they disagree with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on. Like most people would consider wokeness like a new phenomenon, or pretty recent, at least in terms of it having any sort of power or influence in society, a very recent phenomenon. And the issues that they have with it are because they engage in censorship. They suppress other people. They don't believe in fair trials or treating people equally. They believe in treating people differently on the basis of their skin color, right, or on the basis of their gender. Like these are illiberal values. Like that's why people would take issue with them. Or also too, like people might like be upset because they prioritize like writing characters in movies or video games certain ways, right, over allowing the artists to have the freedom to make the games that they want to make and creating a good product that is in line with what they want to create, what the consumers want.
Yeah, I just see wokeness as something that the elites, because I give them some credit for elite theory. I just think they are insane for wanting a king instead of elites. Like I just don't understand the sort of monarchist perspective that apparently Hoppa seems to be going into, but yeah, I'll save that for a bit. There's a lot of problems with just this video on its own, I think, rhetorically, and that you already brought up.
And as somewhat of a valid complaint is that too many right-wingers really do just use the word woke to describe things about the left that they don't really like. They don't really have a coherent definition of just what exactly specifically woke ideology is, which then results in a lot of people in general having no idea what woke ideology actually is. And that's a pretty big problem, because when nobody knows what people are talking about when a word is being thrown about, that word inevitably just ends up becoming a snarl word. It effectively loses all meaning. So the word woke is definitely in.
There's so much filler in this video also. Is this like Gish Galloping or just filler? I'm just not understanding.
Well, I would say that it's. I can see why he wanted to bring this up because I think that he does make a correct observation here, which is that people thrown this word around so much and that it has no
waters it down.
Yeah, but then also on top of that too, I think that the people who like initially adopted the phrase in the very beginning are not. I feel like the people who were the social justice warriors like 10 years ago, and then were the CRT people 5 years ago, and are like the woke people today. Like it's like more or less like the same like circle of people, but they're constantly shifting names that people call them. Yeah, but like they should have come up with a name for themselves, and they haven't done so yet. I think that's kind of a problem. They kind of have to blame themselves at this point. If for that.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree on that regards. They definitely did pigeonhole themselves by not taking a stand, letting the sort of culture run rampant. Okay, and serves them right. Serves them right.
Danger of becoming the right-wing version of how breadtubers called everything they don't like to be Nazism. They just kind of throw that word out.
That's called Nazism. I don't know what's with this cute little Nazism. Afraid of monetization. If he says it or something, I just don't know. Or is it a meme thing?
As kind of a snarl word that they think automatically debunks whatever you're saying. Because unfortunately, that is exactly the kind of pseudo-intellectualism I'm seeing in this sort of narrative about the emergence of the woke right. So to prevent us from falling into that pit trap, let's start out with clearly explaining what is meant by wokeness. Going a bit more in detail.
Again, from his red-pilled libertarian perspective. Just to make this clear.
Over things I've said before in other videos. Personally, in the past, I defined wokeness as an aggressive push for diversity, equity, inclusion, usually based on the belief that outcomes which lack these things are in.
I don't even understand this. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why is he using a modern day term for this? Something that hasn't really been used. It seems like just a buzzword that he's trying to tie in with the Gamergate stuff. This stuff annoys me. That
no one has a definition of this woke shit. That like no, there's no consistent definition.
No.
Yeah.
I have a very simple definition now. It's identity politics with power politics. Okay. And anyone who goes along with the grand narratives that can lead people to that. Because a lot of people, woke people, both left and right, they don't want to actually come out and say it a lot of the time. There are some people who will come out and say it, but they need people to prop them up, other people to prop up just the narrative, or at least it seems this way. So they can't actually do the same thing. They have to prop it up the narrative, the fundamental ideas behind the narratives that the more woke people push more aggressively. That's just the way it seems to me.
And just to clarify, Vincent, when you say power politics, I think I know what you mean here, but just to confirm, you're basically a politics of trying to favor one's own side rather than trying to work within a framework of neutral institutions.
Yes.
Okay.
Rules for me, not for thee. Tribalism at its best, generally pushing for whatever grand narrative your team is working with. We've seen the left do it. We've even seen the right do it. Okay. That's not wanting to come to the table and discuss things. Just have this narrative thrown. All Republicans are Nazis. All leftists are communists. All Democrats are communists. It's a lot more complex than that, even at the worst cases. But reductive message is more effective rhetorically to a broader audience. Just like gaming industry, media industry in general, has sort of gotten more broad scale gaming methods to broaden their appeal, which I find comical in the gaming entertainment space. Yes, it's slop. Any more to add to this? I just wanted to point out this weird sort of push for the sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wokeness is more about. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really think so. I mean, I think this is sort of where his problem with it is entirely based on like the identity aspect, because like he doesn't like that they're identitarian. He doesn't like that they're identitarian for non-white people, at least. Not that I'm assuming his like views on other topics, but that's what he's opposed to. But like,
yeah, he doesn't seem to have any of the idea, any of the sort of identity politics. Well, not explicitly. So it seems a little weird.
Yeah, but whereas like I think we would come at it just from an anti-censorship or like a pro-equality angle.
Yeah.
So that's just like that disconnect there is like why like he's going to focus like entirely on that, which like I don't think like identity politics, like I don't think that no one knows. There's again, identity politics, this is something that has like 10 million different definitions, and yes, 10 different people, you get 10 different answers, but like the identity politics that is exclusionary is not good, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, like, recognizing realities that certain people of certain backgrounds has disadvantages, because I come from a more broad scale sort of approach to this sort of content here, that if we try to uplift everyone equally, at least give them a fair starting line, we'll see. We will better be able to see, like, if it's you have a genius poor kid, possibly the next Einstein, but he lives in a poor family. If you try to raise everyone's intelligence across the board within a country using the sort of social contract, not just leaving them alone because they're in a poor family, that kid could be the next Einstein. That kid could significantly improve the world. But I've come to term, my ethical system seems to be from a utilitarian perspective, but it's a really weird sort of perspective in utilitarianism. But that's my personal thing there. And I'm probably a little off topic there.
Oh, you're all right.
See, sort of watching things, I'm sort of cutting him some of his points that he's going to bring up. I should directly work.
Indicative of discrimination and or unfair social treatment. Now, the first thing to really point out here is understanding that DEI is an inherently collectivist way of thinking. It implies that people are being treated differently depending on which group they are assumed to belong to. And so wokeness is inherently collectivist. So this...
See, this is why his definition of wokeness is horrible. The DEI is not inherently collectivist. There's a libertarian push a few years ago to sort of get rid of DEI programs generally, that sort of just was about mitigating what different problems in the workplace. It wasn't based on race. It was based on mitigating problems between individuals at the workplace by taking a more colorblind approach to DEI training. That's the libertarian side that I knew about. I covered one of the programs in the stream. Did it work out? Probably not. But at least they tried to replace it with market forces, taking a colorblind approach opposed to this sort of anti-racist approach that almost all DEI programs institute, which is shown by the research to actually create more division among people, if what I read is correct. Did you look into any of that at all?
Into DEI practices? No, not really.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
As I said, I almost debated Wick one time on CRT. I feel strongly about critical race theory being fundamentally flawed and just divisive overall.
whole aggressive push for DEI is really just a modern day iteration of something that has existed for a long time, which is this type of collectivist thought and collectivist envy and collectivist disdain for the people who are deemed to be more successful. So rather than success being something to look up to and admire, the success is instead seen as a mark of original sin. And from this collectivist thinking, hatred and disdain is then justified against those who have done well in society based purely on their collective group and collective identity.
You want to pause
this is very important to understand, because one of the
you could probably make the same critique, but of the other way, of the right, that the people who are more likely to currently like represent the coalition that represents like the Democrats and the Republicans are going to be a coalition that is not equal in terms of their economic status per se, on average. That the Democratic Party is like much more college educated party. That a lot of these people have gone to university, they've got degrees, they have like higher paying jobs. I want to look at I would want to look at data before like drawing firm conclusions on this. Like I don't know how much like the like wealthy billionaires and millionaires like would skew things necessarily, but in terms of like the upper middle class at least, like that's much more of like a more like left leaning environment and culture. Whereas like the people who represent more like the Trump coalition today are on average again much more like lower economic status.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like
Yeah.
I think that resentment like plays a part of it too. I think that they resent. I think there is a resentment there against education and against
Oh, absolutely. I'm
cultural
sure the
mores.
lockdowns have definitely emboldened elite theory, because maybe Fauci didn't technically lie. I think he did, but I would have to go back and double check. But I think he said stuff and like, oh yeah, I just said that about the mask at the time because there wasn't enough. He still lied to the public. Okay, that's not a very good look.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start lying, you just got to keep on lying. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories that, frankly, might have a little bit of truth behind it. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're absolutely right. They're definitely, the right wing is definitely someone, not that the left, you can be overeducated to trust. Like the Me Too movement, there's so many issues with the left that were sort of conditioned. Believe all accusers, all victims, should I say, with the Me Too movement. And there's the Black Lives Matter stuff. And there was sort of a... Go on.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the Black Lives Matter thing. That was a terrible thing that happened to was it? Oh God, I can't remember his name. George Floyd? Yeah, George Floyd. Horrible thing. And I'm sure it's happened before, but they sort of overhyped, over-sensationalized it and made it to be like, this is what the police are. So we had those protests. This was during lockdown also. The sort of right-wingers who tried to kidnap one of the Michigan.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Whitmer,
like a couple of those people were FBI informants. They even made a meme out of it. I've seen like a couple of them were sort of trying to entrap this right-wing group into kidnapping this. I don't trust
the story at all.
I don't trust the information that comes out anymore, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. So
no, I think a lot of people do feel the same way. I think that like right now, the issue, I think like the dividing line in our society and like in our politics at least, and then also the top issue I think we need to work on is trust in institutions. I think that right now there's a division, right, where like center people, I guess in general, like center left or right, would they're living in a completely different media environment right now, and like everyone's lost almost like large swaths of the country have lost faith in institutions, and sometimes for good reasons, like you mentioned Fauci lying, which I believe, yes, I believe that he did lie. Yeah, I believe that was my recollection of the time, at least. I haven't gone back and like looked at it again a few years later.
mean, if we're incorrect, we were fed fake news, okay? But that does seem to be...
There were these failures of institutions, and now there were failures of institutions during COVID, and then there were failures of institutions before this too, because of like the woke mind virus, right? To use Elon's kind of language, like there were failures of institutions before that too, like the Gamergate conversation, like certain
Yep.
news stories that were promoted that ended up being true, like the regarding like Black Lives Matter stuff, especially, like
Yeah.
regarding like
Oh yeah, I saw today.
but the Michael Brown
two
shooting,
of
for
the
instance,
three
right?
mansions of the Black Lives, the founder burned. Like I saw someone post that. I don't know if it's true or not. It's just sort of funny if it is.
There have been many issues, and then also, but then so people turned this and they're like, oh well, gosh, ABC News lied about this thing or got this thing wrong, and so now I'm going to like go trust like all of my information from Tucker Carlson instead. But like
Yeah, it's a
that's not like a
reactionary
good.
stance, okay?
That's not. Yeah, you
Just
run from
because
like
one
one.
side are assholes doesn't mean
Yeah.
you go to their enemies. Your 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 enemy's enemy is not always your friend. Typically, they're not. Depends on who you are.
Yeah. So, but you're probably, as much as I would dislike like some of what ABC News has done in the past, and will be criticizing them more in the future. Like I would probably trust that on like 90% of topics, like ABC is probably going to actually do a better job than Tucker Carlson, who was
Oh
like
yeah,
literally fired for lying to the American public about the results of the election, knowingly lying.
yeah. It's a really weird one that I think is culturally relevant. I think he chose it mainly for the DEI tie-in, but I could be wrong there. I could be wrong. But yeah, let me read that because it is just made up his own definition of wokeness and used that as a source and sort of cited himself. I explained this in a video before to say why the right can't be woke rather than use an official definition and quote where he got it from. I mean, there's sort of problems with that overall, the official definition. As I said,
Well, I was really shocked too that, well, like he doesn't actually talk about who the people are that are talking about the woke right and like what is their argument. He just sort of like assumes you've seen it, assumes it's wrong, and assumes his definition is different.
he doesn't. Mostly, I might be bad of me to assume his intent, but I get the feeling he doesn't want his audience. He wants a lot of these people. I shouldn't probably apply that to this guy here. Waves. I'm just going to call him Waves for short. Too long of a name to say all the time, but Waves here assumes he doesn't assume that. He just wants to dismiss it. This audience is somewhat of an echo chamber. They don't want information that contradicts their worldview for the most part. That's my thoughts on that.
I don't know him enough to really say personally. I've reached out to him actually to try and talk with him before. I've tried to give him a fair hearing and talk about Gamergate, because I saw he made a video about the Gamergate Wikipedia article. Though the problem I had with his article, his video about that was the same as this, which is that it's completely just low effort content. He doesn't like go in and try. He calls it a debunking of the Gamergate Wikipedia article, and it's like a 20-minute article, a 20-minute video, and he spends like maybe like 2 minutes actually talking about the Wikipedia article. Like the rest of it's just about his philosophy. It's like, well, that doesn't have to do with anything with the article at all.
Yeah, I think he's trying to push. It feels like he's trying to push his politics through his content, which is more aligned with the sort of culture war than straight up politics. That's just how it feels. Okay, I can't confirm it or not. Facts don't care about my feelings in this case. So take
Yeah,
that
no,
with a grain of
I would
salt.
agree. And I don't think it's even wrong to like push your politics in your videos, and just be upfront about that you're an activist first and foremost, and just tell people that. And that's
Yeah,
fine.
I think that's my problem. All these people act like they want to the media, the quality of media to be better, but I'm not seeing that. Seems like you're pushing your own personal politics instead of trying to actually improve anything.
Anyway, we're 3 minutes into a 25-minute video.
One of the ways that woke
yeah,
ideology
yeah.
sort of
It's
gets its
valid.
flaws into society is that it masquerades as good. It masquerades as justice, hence the term social justice. It creates a sort of victim-oppressor dichotomy and claims that people in the less successful victim class are victims of the
Yes,
oppressor class, which
correct.
they then place the people who have been successful into, which is absolutely not moral and ethical at all because it implies collective guilt.
And what moral and ethics are you working from? The sort of moral and ethics reminder that thinks civil rights is pretty much the same as DI. And I think the people are just, I don't know what they're thinking when they try to compare, when people try to compare the civil rights of the 60s, where you had riots and people fighting for their rights. Literally, they didn't have the same rights to what's going on today, where they are taking overstep a privileged class. Seems that way to me.
Inherently, it necessitates holding people accountable for things that they had no part in. And often those things they are being held accountable to, in addition to being
Oh, and this is ironic here.
collective guilt, are things that aren't even real crimes, which is the next big thing to really point out here. Wokeness is an ideology that relies very
ironic?
heavily on subjective morality.
Oh, he's talking about collective guilt. Collective guilt. That's is what the woke people do. They oppose collective guilt on people. That do I
Hey,
actually
do that? Yeah, no, yeah. I do have to explain.
You pre-watched it. You know as well as I do.
Yeah.
The unfair social treatment can be anything. It can be completely made up emotional harm from the care harm morality that the far left tends to follow, which is a very important thing to understand. Their claims to victimhood are entirely subjective and completely unfalsifiable. It's impossible.
He's correct there. A lot of them are.
No,
Sometimes
I
they
agree
have
with Joseph.
evidence for it. This is why I hate postmodern subjective thinking. And I would rather go with the modernistic view. Sometimes you can't prove something to be true, but there's enough evidence to sort of get an idea what the truth is most likely is. That's my perspective on it. As someone who's a modernist who tries to figure out the truth. Do I necessarily know the truth? No, I don't claim to.
To prove that the hurt feels don't exist, because anybody can claim that for any reason.
Yep.
Anybody can subjectively claim to have been emotionally harmed by
can be
something. That is
lying.
the reason why they aren't as successful, and it does not need to make sense in the way that care harm morality works. So the ideology does not require them to have any real evidence to this type of claim. It can be completely made up, unfalsifiable conjecture, and that is a feature of wokeness, not a bug. It's very logically incoherent. Woke ideology tends to come packed with a lot of intentionally fallacious reasoning. For instance, going back to the collectivist brain rot, it is almost always an ecological fallacy, where it is falsely assumed that traits of a group always apply to individuals within that group, or the reverse, a
And he spends so much time. Okay.
And that's an important thing for people to really understand. There's one thing about wokeness that everybody needs to grasp. It is the collectivist envy and collectivist guilt element of it, which they then back up with subjective claims about emotional harm that cannot actually be disproven, as they are not actually based on any real evidence, which is what makes woke ideology.
Did I rewind by accident instead of push ahead? This sounds like the same thing over and over. Yeah,
Ideology so incredibly evil. It masquerades itself by oversimplifying the concept of justice as something that can be applied to every individual.
And I'm curious of his ethical system. He's talking about evil, so that that makes me think he has some sort of ethical system, morality system.
Which he talks really about it later. Yeah, he says that he
does.
It's property rights. He says.
Got it. Yeah, that's not really an ethical system, though. As I said, I'm sort of some form of utilitarianism, generally along the consequentialist line. You know, I'm a little fuzzy with that. I think getting too strongly bogged down into what your ethics are can sometimes impede you from missing the forest for the trees. But that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do like a way deep dive at some point in the future on the topic of ethics and morality. But right now, I guess my ethics are based on minimizing harm and maximizing.
Oh, you gotta hate this since he hates the care harm. I mean, yeah, the left does definitely fucking push that button a little bit too hard.
But you have to balance like different competing things. But yes, society values a lot of different things, and like you're gonna have to like balance certain different liberties against each other. Yeah. Or they're not liberties, but different priorities and interests.
Yeah, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. What? calls anti-gun evil. I mean, I think anti-gun in America is just ridiculous. But where gun laws hasn't been established, that's probably smart. Not that knives are great in Britain. You know, they don't have guns. People find other ways to kill things.
Yeah, I'm pretty chill. If you want to own a gun, I don't really give a shit. Own whatever you want. I don't care as long as you're a
It would be
law-abiding citizen.
impractical to
You're
sort
not
of have
threatening me,
strict.
and yeah, just be responsible about it. Of course, like I'm not going to encourage people to be irresponsible. Of course.
Yeah, in the U.S., there's just we've had this sort of culture along with if you start outlawing guns in the U.S., only the people who break the law will have the guns, and that seems a little fucked up to me.
It's also probably good that power, I think, is dispersed as a general matter.
Yeah.
I think that the being able to own weapons and organize effectively with other people, I think, is actually a deterrent against against authoritarian government, or it can be.
Yeah, I've heard leftists like they can get a tank or drone. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's more about the symbol of power in some people's mind. It gives them confidence. Okay, yeah, it's a little lame, but the right to have it is a symbolic act. I can be brave because my government allows me to have these weapons.
Well, I don't think it's just symbolic, though. I mean, we were
It's not
defeated in
just
Afghanistan by
symbolic.
cavemen, right?
I'm saying against the sort of leftist thing. Like if the military wanted to take you out, so what? They would have you could broadcast that on the internet. And social media is a game changer, okay? George Floyd taught us that. I think that was well,
You know, Elon Musk might have taught us that too.
oh, good point.
Elon Musk may have as well. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll see.
I saw something today, which I'm like, that has to be artificial likes. This one guy, but might get into it, might not.
Individual, regardless of their actual involvement, and in some cases, regardless of whether or not the crime even really happened, or if what happened can even be considered a crime to begin with. And that's because ultimately wokeness is just a pseudo-intellectual way to justify the collectivist envy. It's an attempt to put an
pseudo-intellectual, and he is acting like an intellectual here. I just wanted to point that out.
Academic gloss on the act of viewing success as the result of some kind of collective crime. Crimes that, again, can be completely subjective, unfalsifiable nonsense. Nearly every single genocide in human history has been justified using this kind of faulty collectoid reasoning. Now, in the current modern day, this has manifested as DEI. It generally claims that white people have gained a status of unearned privilege through systemic discrimination and oppression of those who are not white. This is why when you see DEI being pushed by the far left and
okay, this is just reiterating the same thing over. Do you disagree, Tachyon Blue? He just reiterates things.
Repetition. Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, rhetorically, I understand why you would want to do it. Hammer your point home. Part example. Okay. This part I do want to get into. Prejudice plus power. What did you ever hear about this? And what is your thoughts on P plus P equals R?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I heard it. This is something it's been around for apparently since 1970, according to this Wikipedia article. But it's something I first heard about a decade ago. And yeah, sure, the idea that you can't be racist against somebody or sexist or whatever, like whatever ism you want to throw around, if you're part of a minority group, you can't be racist against the majority group because you don't have the power to implement systemic or institutional discrimination. You can only do so on a personal level, which they view to be prejudice rather than racism or sexism.
Yep. Frankly, and his sort of DEI definition, DEI is a term used on a corporate level. That's something more corporate. And the fact that he's using that as the definition of wokeness, and he even brings up the progressive stack. That was sort of used. I see that as sort of also, I think Mr. Medicare, good old Jim, sees that as the start of the sort of cultural shift we're going in. Occupy Wall Street, the progressive stack to sort of create conflict among the protesters of Occupy Wall Street. It's a commonly held belief among many people. Mr. Medeker, I think even Tim Pool had this idea that, well, he was also part of it. That's where he sort of got his chops. Let's not talk about Tim Pool of where he's gone. But the point is, the progressive stack is inherently something to disrupt, cause infighting among each other. That's the way I see it, because that seems to be the result of it. It's a competition for this. And that I see as like the start of wokeness. You know, identity politics for the sake of power. That's why I keep my example. I just have to keep on dumbing down because I understand the utility of keeping a message simple and not complex. But I'm learning as I'm going on, believe it or not.
Prejudice plus power, which of course implies that all white people are collectively guilty of it, which again will inevitably run into some kind of ecological or compositional fallacy, before you even start to look into whether or not that prejudice and power even exists, which oftentimes it really doesn't, especially when you look at the individual, and remember why collective guilt isn't really a thing. But of course, that's not what really matters, because that's just the woke scolds attempting to make themselves look like they're standing up for the victims, when really they're just justifying using different rules against different people. And so really, it is all just pseudo-intellectualism in order to justify impugning the collective guilt. But it's also why wokeness can sometimes come in very subversive, bizarre forms. For example, a lot of people have trouble understanding why representation in media can often be seen as woke. And the reason it's often woke really just...
And I don't even know why he gets into this fucking point here. Did you want to go over this? I almost want to skip it because it seems like a total...
Wait, did he say anything interesting? I don't remember. I don't think he did about this, about media.
No, he just goes with the narrative. I see wokeness as an excuse to just hire crappy ass people.
Oh no, yeah,
built-in technology.
Yeah, you're right. Basically, I think what he does basically, he basically just tries to say that that the reason people take issue with like wokeness in media is because it makes the you just skip it. It doesn't matter. I don't think he said anything interesting.
You can have all these characters well written. It's an excuse to hire activists.
Oh, that they prioritize. That they prioritize politics, which ruins the characters. That's what his argument is, I think, basically, right?
Yeah, they are.
Turns them into Mary Sue's because you're so because they're operating based on false information. Their view, I think he argues, is that there are no diverse characters, or there's so few in movies and video games that we got to like make up for it by having more and more and more today. That
which
this results in watered down characters who aren't as naturally developed and have flaws. So
you can't give a minority flaws. You can't make them a bad guy. And I think we're coming out of that now. Okay, I think some of that is going away. There's still signs of it. Okay, because Black people deserve to actually have well-written characters with everyone of every. I'm an individualist. Okay, I don't care about the color of the skin. I will accept certain people from different backgrounds have different advantages here and there, but at the end of the day, diversity, integration seems to be the problem a lot of countries have with their incoming population. Okay, and
it's checking. They will call out white people as a collective group and claim that your success is at least partially built on a foundation of privilege, which of course is just an ecological fallacy. Again, when you understand the faulty reasoning behind wokeness and how to spot it, it becomes a lot easier to identify wokery and to not just call it out, but also explain why it is wrong. That's again something I see a lot of people
explain why it's wrong. Being discriminated. Okay. This might actually be a way
to define woke ideology, because that, in fact, is what the woke scolds want you to think. Woke ideologues want you to think that they are simply against mistreatment of people based on immutable traits, which is really not what wokeness is at all. If that was true, then certain aspects of woke ideology, such as the progressive stack, would not exist. They wouldn't try.
Progressive stack, okay? Yeah, it's a sort of cognitive dissonance that has issues. It breaks down. I personally think it breaks down under scrutiny. This is why I'm against identity politics overall. But the way he's using this, it's like he doesn't even understand. He's just using these buzzwords without any.
Well,
Maybe he does understand.
he also recognizes, like, strangely, he's like, he recognizes that there's like multiple different groups that exist on the right. But then, like, the left is always a monolith, it seems, in how he talks about it. At least in this
Exactly. This
video.
is why the collective guilt. He's applying collective guilt to all these people on the left. Maybe he thinks his background, his many videos on Bosch, someone I also think is, I wouldn't call him evil, but it just because it's a little hard for me from my perspective, but he's pretty close to evil, pure evil. Bosch. Maybe not. Maybe not. He definitely
I don't know enough about him.
Sociopathic.
Yeah,
He's definitely sociopathic.
Yeah, I don't know a huge amount about his content. I've seen more of like Hassan's content, unfortunately, and he's like quite awful. But
yeah, Hassan's pretty bad. And
but
even
Bosch is pro-Ukraine, I'm pretty sure. But yeah,
that's how you decide a pro-UK. Ukraine. I mean, he definitely demonizes and goes wink wink. He literally.
No, he does demonize people. You're right. He demonized like Anna Kasparian on like sexist grounds, actually, which I criticize him for.
He's very blatantly us versus them. Okay, it's hilarious. I saw one clip where this woman was talking about being abused and how she was afraid to go to the police. He was all like, "Oh yeah, this is what women go through." And as soon as she breeds up, it was like a minorities who like Muslim rape gang, supposedly, who he starts calling her a liar. Like, oh, you were right to say she was a bitch. And shit like that. This is a great ass clip.
I remember somebody did that. Was that Vosh?
Well, probably a lot of lefties do it, but yeah, Vosh. I saw that clip recently. It's hilarious. What Timon, why bring up Dev? We haven't even gotten to the man yet, okay? And I don't even necessarily agree with his video. There is one thing I do agree with. I wonder if Tachyon Blue is going to agree. You saw that video.
Try to elevate people's status based on their gender, race, or other identity based on their membership to being some kind of historically marginalized group. And they wouldn't try to be...
Let me actually... How do I feel about James Lindsay version of Woke Right? Or I think it's okay. I think it has a lot of holes, and he leaves, I think by pointing out certain people and not other people, he gives a lot of people to be like this guy does in this video, to be like, yeah, how are you lumping this guy in with all these other people? But I'll get to that. We'll definitely get to a couple of things.
Belittle someone based on their membership to a group which the wokes view as historically privileged. And I think that's another reason why a lot of people have trouble sort of pinning down what woke ideology specifically is. It is inherently a very dishonest and deceptive ideology that includes a lot of inherently subjective and contradictory elements. That's why my definition of wokeness...
And his definition, okay? He's trying to cut through the deceptive nature. How much is he poisoning the woke ideology, the sort of how hard it is to sort of pin it down and how evil it is? See, these are rhetorical tricks that are definitely used to sort of maybe poison the well to anyone who's trying to hint that James Lindsay, as he does later on, is woke, is the real woke one. I see this done a lot.
Well, he does this.
A lot of people do that. No, he's the real woke one, and blah,
the real horseshoe is the center and the far, the other extreme. That's sort of an extremist tactic you see, where they'll try to claim that the real extremists are the center and the other extreme rather than them. There's no horseshoe theory.
No, the center is generally cowards who just let...
Which, like, if you really are a libertarian, this guy says he's a libertarian. He makes a lot of his identity seems to be based on this libertarian philosophy, or what he perceives to be libertarianism. But like, he doesn't. If you're a libertarian, why would you? Yeah, if you're a libertarian, like, why are you like so obsessed with like this woke culture war stuff? And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like it's something you probably shouldn't like give it that much of a shit about.
I was fine with his critiques of Vosh. Well,
and why are you caping? Like, why are you caping though? Like, why is he caping for these people who want to like engage in censorship and suppress other people? Like, that's very anti-libertarian. And maybe he doesn't see himself as doing that, but like de facto, like that's probably going to be the outcome of what he
I
does.
have a theory on that. I have a theory on that. He was forced to do this. He was forced to do this by James Lindsay. You'll see when we get to it.
Problem is actually that their claims of discrimination and victimhood aren't true. That's the main difference between what makes something victimhood and what makes someone an actual victim of a real crime. True recognition of a crime is not wokeness. For example, imagine if someone set fire to your house and then the arsonist laughed at you and accused you of playing the victim when you tried to take him to court for the act of burning your house down. What makes it victimhood within woke ideology and what makes it fake is that the victimhood comes in the form of things that aren't real property crimes. And this is why the way at least libertarian right defines being right-wing, wokeness within the right isn't really a thing. Because if you are pro-individual and pro-free markets, this ultimately means that you are pro-property rights.
But are you really pro-individual and pro property rights? Okay, maybe he is, maybe. God,
I'm not going to call him.
Even these two.
I don't know anything about his other philosophy or views. So, is that
where we're gonna
Cerberus, by the way? It looks like Dirge of Cerberus. Or is that
what?
something else?
Oh yeah, he's playing Dirge of Cerberus.
Okay.
I definitely love that game. Okay, again, my name came from Vincent Valentine from Final Fantasy VII and Vincent Price, two awesome Vincents.
Things, you must also believe that individuals have bodily autonomy, that the consent of the individual matters, and that a person can create private property through things like homesteading, and that this is an extension of their property rights because they use the labor of the body that they have autonomy over to transform that which is in nature to something that is uniquely theirs. There really isn't room for collectivist victimhood in this kind of thinking. If you believe in collective
he should definitely be pro-choice then, if he cares about consent and all that stuff.
Well,
maybe he is.
You could be pro-life and be libertarian, I guess, if you are of the view that, because like your position would be that it's murder, right? That the that the embryo has, that the fetus has like certain rights unto itself, or it should be recognized as having such at least, because it is a distinct person.
Good point. I mean, there's some people, pro-lifers, who think contraception, condoms, and birth control are evil also by their morality, but that's because of have more of a God sinner focus. So
yeah, then they're not libertarian. I don't know if you could.
Yeah, I don't. That is strange.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some mental gymnastics you could have that position as a libertarian.
But
I guess like I wouldn't want to know it.
You would have to, it would have to be some very convoluted. It would be like, oh, like every time you masturbate, you're causing genocide, right? Oh, you're killing thousands.
Yeah, I'm sure some people would make that. People. Okay,
and so we have to stop this horrific thing from happening. But like, you'd have to demonstrate that that's true, though, and like that's where they probably fall apart. Like, I don't like what are we protecting? Like their souls that like.
Yeah, you're protecting the life of the cells that, if combined with the egg, will become a life. He just reiterates a lot of things that I can see. I can agree with a lot of these things. Okay, I would like actual solid individual examples of this. You know, he's all for individualism. So why is he not bringing up actual individuals on the left that does this sort of stuff? That would be great. Short form video, I guess. Give him a pass. Oh, this is actually somewhat important, I think.
On the right. And so to some degree, there is kind of a collectivist right. For example, Wignots or the National Socialist types essentially agree with a lot of Marxist takes on the collective. They just do it from a standpoint of being pro-white identity rather than anti-white identity.
Yeah.
And so they're partially right-wing because they're pro-time preferences. But I would actually argue that they give in to a lot of leftist thinking when it comes to individual rights and individual freedom, and especially the free market, because you actually see.
Yeah, this is why a lot of people don't consider Nazis right-wing. I think they're sort of a merger, like Bolsheviks, you know. They take a buffet of ideas from left and right wing to sort of culminate. But there is some more right wing authoritarian groups.
Well, it's kind of they're kind of a weird, you must call it like third position or whatever, right? Like where they're like socially like the extreme furthest right you could possibly be, but then like on economic issues, there's somewhere a little bit more like in between, like capitalism and socialism. I think it's more of like a corporate.
Like
on this stuff, but
that would be like the CCP, okay?
Yeah, sort of like what, yeah, you're right. Like where it's like a mix of like government and business kind of like merged together and like tightly embedded with each other.
Yeah,
But like still private enterprise like still exists, but it exists primarily like to serve the state or to, as long as it
correct.
doesn't go against the state, at least.
Yes, I think that's the prime concern. They don't care the social credit score. They use sort of tactics to sort of incentivize people to be pro state and not go against the state. Because you go against the state, lots of bad things happen in China.
See a lot of sort of leftist economic takes coming from the Wignots as well. I have definitely seen from these people some quote conservative unquote takes on why capitalism is bad, unless we should somehow create a conservative version of communism to combat it, which is of course absurd because communism doesn't work. But I would argue that this is actually just a result of that ideology not really being fully right wing, but rather those components of their ideology are actually examples of them giving into leftist thinking and far left ways of looking at power dynamics. Because of course left and right aren't really true binaries. Very few people are fully to the right or fully to the left. And honestly, I'm not sure if you can really consider the Wignots or the Groypers to be woke, because they admit that they're not really for equality. They don't really have collectivist envy towards success, so they don't really utilize the equity fallacy at all.
What are you talking about? How many, like Nick Fuentes definitely got pissed off about Trump. That's like the king of the gropers. He definitely felt like he was betrayed by Trump, that his America First or whatever his group is, the gropers, were treated unfairly and badly by Trump. A lot of these people definitely had issues with it. They feel like they've been betrayed as people. And how?
Well, how
This
do you? Sorry, go ahead.
also, what's his name? Punch a Nazi guy. Spencer. Spencer also was. I remember Spencer being extremely pro Biden. Okay, they are extremely vindictive.
Well,
just don't
I
know
think Spencer's like, at least ostensibly. I don't know if you believe him or not, but like he's supposedly like changed his views.
I haven't been keeping up with him. I don't trust him.
I don't I don't trust like anybody online. But what do you think about him saying that the Groypers are different because they don't pretend to believe in equality? Do you think that that is a distinction
I
that
think
is
it's just a
meaningful?
reactionary stance. And that's something they lean into because they have no choice. Like a lot of the anti-woke people. Okay. They're like, oh, we can be as make as racist or just go out because no one believes that stuff anymore. We're just memeing. Okay. We're not seriously this way, except for there's probably a couple of people in there who start faking it until you make it. Do you believe in that? That you can just hey, and I'm as someone who's a consequentialist, believes that even if you don't believe in the things that you're spouting and putting out in the world, if other people believe it and believe it to be true and find ideas to accept, social acceptance, that they might legitimately be more inclined to legitimately look into a lot of terrible ideas. That's my personal belief on that.
I don't know. Like, so are you referring to like if you're exposed to, let's say, like a 4chan or like 8chan, right? If you go to these sites, like, do you end up becoming the thing that you're joking about? Is that what you're asking essentially?
I think that possibility does exist. I think it's more likely if you're an influencer and you just joke and act like this, people will start, dumber people than you will start looking into this and find other people of similar thing, like sort of grooming on Discord. Okay. You start going into these spaces where there will be legitimate Nazis who will be trying to recruit people.
You know,
That's more.
One of the people I've interviewed for the Gamergate series is Atheist. And when I talked with him, he wasn't involved with Gamergate. He was actually one of the third party trolls that I interviewed. He talks about how he was playing World of Warcraft and he met a bunch of people for like this clan that he joined, that was very conservative, and they would go and then they created a Discord server later on, and he would harass social justice warriors, like send them gore pictures, stuff like that, on Twitter using this Skype, not Discord, it was Skype actually. Sorry, it was a Skype group. It was like a decade ago, and they would just like harass and brigade these people online for the lulz, for fun, and like they would, and according to him, like they were a pretty like far right-ish group.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like a very real phenomenon. I think to some extent that this
And sometimes you get stuck in a hole.
radicalization
I believe you
pipeline
can get stuck in a hole where you have there's no path to coming back. And that is partially the left. There is a problem with no sort of path to recovery from that. And a lot of that comes from left holding on to things. But I've been seeing right using quotes from 10 years ago, 10 years ago, as proof that these people are horrible racist leftists. They believed in this stuff. A lot of these people believe in this stuff. And there's probably a lot of these people on the right. I wouldn't call them woke right. They believe in these ideas that a lot of these people either hold or pretend to hold for the sake of power politics for their side.
Vincent, you mentioned 10 years ago, and people bringing stuff up from so long ago. That's really interesting because I see that to this day, where I'll see on Twitter especially, but I'm sure every social media platform has this. People are sharing like screenshots of like I saw one the other day, and it was like screenshots of tweets that were talking about like kill all men. And like the Twitter user who shared this said, this needs to stop happening. And it's like tweets from like 9 years ago. It's like,
it stopped happening. Does it happen now?
Like, yeah, but like, I don't know. Maybe I haven't checked the hashtag. Maybe there's still people posted on the, maybe it's like thousands of new tweets a day. I don't know. I doubt it. But but I feel like the internet, I feel like that's how things are going to almost be, where it's like people are like, oh, look at this thing that this post, this horrific thing that people on this side said, and it's going to be something from like fucking like 12 years ago or 8 years ago, and it's like, oh my god.
And all context is lost on some of this stuff. You don't know the circumstances. They could have been LARPing. They could have been joking. Oh, there's a problem with context, lack of context, and not given the best faith interpretation. Okay. And I probably am in fault for not having the best faith interpretation of some things, but I try to give some leeway with my commentary when I make it. Like with Waves here. Like,
yeah, have we been too hard on him?
No, I don't think so. I think I've had points in my past where I'm like, yeah, maybe I should have prefaced it, should have put it in a certain context. But you know what? I'm very introspective. I think about my actions and how that affects the world. Or sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I don't think. But some people would say, be like, in taking accountability, that's lame. I've had someone like, so you're taking, no, I'm just being honest with what I was doing at that particular time. That's it. If you want to accept it or not, you want to judge me, fine. I'll take the judgment.
And they certainly don't push for DEI. They mostly just want to live in a homogenous society, and they are just very deeply.
Yeah. Oh God, they don't push for DEI, but they do push for actual racially homogenous communities with unrealistic plans, like all white communities and crap like that. And they
you
never.
Know what that sounds like to me?
What does it sound like to you?
I think it sounds like DEI for white people.
Well, DEI, I think it
Or
sounds like
affirmative
reverse
action,
DEI,
really, right? It's like
Yeah.
affirmative action, really, for white people. But
Yeah, all the minorities, they've gotten the past. They've gotten all these privileges through affirmative action. Let's do reverse affirmative action, okay? Give all the people who were passed up for jobs and didn't get the scholarships for all those darn minorities. Let's give them the bit. Okay. I'm being a little unfair here.
yeah, but it shouldn't he like? But this is the thing he's talking. Like, this is the thing that other people are talking about, right? It's a even his own definition, right? We use putting aside like his focus on exclusively like the DEI words themselves, but like if his definition of woke is anything that is collectivist, then certainly this would also fit. But he doesn't agree with the Wignats either. He says so. We could we're not even really arguing with him. Just his definition of things.
Oh God, I hate some
misguided on how to get that. And the silly thing is, a lot of that misguidedness comes from them having a few left-leaning beliefs within their ideology. Which brings me to my next point, which is that most of the people who have been throwing the term woke right around are ironically the people who are guilty of having some woke thoughts of their own. For example, there's a lot of sort of centrist, conservative, liberal types out there who have some right-leaning beliefs again, but they still...
Why are you generalizing? I thought you were individualist, Waves. Give us some names, okay? You clearly went through Bosch, which I agree. Bosch, complete brain rot, complete tribalistic asshole. Why not any names? Why broad brush people into a collectivist group? Oh, they're centrist. Typically are the less collectivist people out there. Typically, I don't even think the term centrist should be used for me anymore. But yeah,
why shouldn't
give in to
centrist
the
be
left
used
on
for you
certain
anymore?
parts of the
huh? I don't
Why
know.
shouldn't
I don't know.
centrist?
It's just like I don't have center opinions. I have my own opinions. I'm an individualist. Okay, I'm a liberal. Okay, I believe in all the liberal values, not leftist values. Dipshits who try to be like, yeah, liberals are the leftists. No, there's a distinction between liberals. Liberals try to respect, understand the social contract that we live in a society, that we have to get along with each other. We have to make allowances. A lot of liberals don't have hard lines. I think that's a lot of liberals. The sort of straw man that a lot of post-liberals, what is it? Liberal limit phobia. There's like limophobia by one of these post liberals. The social contract, there's too many restrictions within the classical liberal mindset. You have to respect others to almost an absurd degree. It's actually very annoying at times. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Vincent, because I feel exactly the same way. There's a lot of limits to being a liberal. Like being a liberal is great. It's the best. Though sometimes you just want to be a dick, and I feel like
And
I
sometimes
can't
I
just
am a
be
dick, and I'll admit it. I'll be like, yeah, I was being a dick. If you want a sorry, I'll give you a sorry, but I'm not gonna. I'll own up to me being a dick, but
there is something to be said for. Though it's not really a liberal thing. It's probably more that I've expanded like the circle of. So right now, because of like I operate in a very weird world. You do too, where we're both very independent in how we analyze things, but at the same
it's hard.
time,
Wouldn't it be great if we had a whole group to sort of back us up and sort of prop us up?
yeah. Well, there's no community for that. Like there is, like it's sort of like the Destiny community, I guess, like in the streamer
Oh
spot.
fucking hell! Why the Destiny?
You're gonna be an orbiter, Vincent. We're gonna make you an orbiter.
Oh, fuck Destiny, okay? He has some good things. I liked his stance on Kyle Rittenhouse. Okay. That was the last great thing that I saw him do. He had some good points. I saw a clip of him today. Oh, God, that just hurt my head. Let me not get into it.
Well,
I understand.
we should definitely talk about it. No, let's not. Let's move on.
Oh, God. I was in a chat with President Sunday just a couple hours ago. I don't know why President Sunday was there, but oh, God. Yeah.
Ideology. For example, people who kind of lean to the right, but still have yet to realize why the Civil Rights Act of 1964 wasn't actually a good piece of legislation. They don't realize that civil rights in practice is actually just the equity fallacy. It allows neo-Marxists to thus use
like this. this. They keep on saying civil rights. What do you mean by civil rights? That's a very broad thing.
No, he said the Civil Rights Act of
particular laws.
1964. He talks about this.
Yeah,
this
he
specific
does
law.
say 1964. Yeah. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Okay, seriously.
He is assuming that the viewer already knows about it, right? But essentially, and I'm sure had other provisions in it too. But the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? I believe it was you can't discriminate on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation. Well, I mean that came later, I guess, with the courts.
Yeah.
But
and a lot of
discriminate.
leftists have literally found ways around it, like with the Harvard lawsuit. They found a way around their own laws. Hell, even California had issues with civil rights. It caused issues with them trying to literally try to discriminate against white people. In some cases,
the Supreme Court has ruled that that affirmative action, that the way it was practiced, at least, or I think in general actually, was unconstitutional because it violates. Well, I guess either the equal protection or was it the Civil Rights Act, one of the two. But
yeah, I don't know the particular details. I suck with details, anyways. But in the general, we're not going to go off on this. Okay, let's just assume it's something weird, which I.
No, it's just basic. Like, you've worked a job before, right, Vincent?
No, I've never worked a job. I've lived with my great grandmother for all of my life. She's like a shrewd. She's like wealthy. No, yes, I've worked jobs before.
No, the reason I sorry to be not offensive about it. Sorry to be offensive about it, but
I'm just making a joke off of it.
Yeah. So you obviously, I'm sure you've had to take probably your DEI training course, right, or whatever, right? Where they're telling you about the laws, like you can't engage in discrimination on the basis of.
Oh, I didn't consider that DEI. That's just basic, like, don't treat people.
That's the law. That's the Civil Rights Act he's talking about. That's all from that, or plus a couple other things too, like there's genetic information was added.
Actually,
later
I
on
don't
and
think
stuff,
they had those courses. I'm a white person in a minority area. It's called, you treat minorities badly, you get your ass beat. Okay, that's the law I learned, literally.
But yeah, like that's what he's talking about. The Civil Rights Act, like there may be other. I think there's other provisions too, like there's a housing aspect of it as well.
That
like
came
you can't
later.
discriminate. You can't
the
discriminate as a
redlining laws,
landlord.
I think, came later. But yes, I think those are good things. Redlining, I think it's called. Sorry. Redlining is district stuff. Sorry. But yeah, there are good things in there and there's crap things in there. Simple as that. Just saying abolish. I definitely think civil rights needs to be reformed in the modern era. Okay. I think it needs to be reformed. We hold on to all these stupid ass laws that don't evolve with society, and with the internet pushing society, laws aren't even going to be able to keep up. They're trying to, doing a crappy job of that, in my opinion. Any more to be said on that, or continue?
No, sir, we're good.
Yeah, one of my
their ideology by pointing to any unequal outcome they don't like. Keywords, unequal outcomes they don't like, because again, they're not consistent on this, and therefore claiming that it accounts towards an illegal form of discrimination. And a lot of center-right libs who believe in a kind of slightly right-leaning version of liberal democracy, they often don't really see the contradiction in this. They often don't realize that the Civil Rights Act, in practice, is really just the current...
He's putting them in a collective center-right liberals, classical liberals, in a fucking collectivist group with they're the most disorganized motherfuckers who can't get their act together. Sometimes they branch off because they're tired of not having any power. This is why a lot of people in the center either aren't political or just end up going one side or the other, because it's just tough not having a tribe, or a tribe that's so confused with each other. But last time I'll bring that up.
Beat stick that the far left neo-Marxists are using as a way to aggressively push their ideology. And so I see this very sad confusion amongst the conservative liberal types, where they correctly identify how the neo-Marxists are using false accusations of discrimination as a way to push Marxist ideology, but then they don't want to abolish the legislation which allows the Marxists to do that, which is weird because a lot of times these people on the center right, they've correctly recognized the equity.
So if all of this comes from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, then why did it take until like 2014 for us to have any problems with it? Like 60 years later, right? Like the Gamergate shit, or whether you want to put it like you put it, I think 2012, right? With like the BLM or something like that, right?
Oh, that was 2020.
No, it was you
2012.
put Occupy was like 2009. You put right, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
when specifically the progressive stack started in Occupy though. It might have been after like a year or two into it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know the exact date. I think
So
that
like,
was like
but yeah, like you've gone like 60 years without having this like woke problem emerge. So like, I don't know. It seems like the whole liberal democracy thing is pretty great. Maybe we should go back to that.
Yeah, it's very slow. Very slow. They have to be very insidious. Okay. They are very slow.
Well, he
like
would.
the
I
turtle.
wonder if his answer to this would just be that, like, yes, the neo-Marxists had to take that long to march through the institutions to organizationally capture them, and it's been like the Illuminati behind the scenes, like.
Funny story, bro. Who knows? Okay. Headcanon that in for waves here. Okay, and put a pin in it. Maybe, maybe not. No, I'm not gonna go to that. Yeah.
Fallacy. They understand why equity is just a disingenuous tactic by Marxists in order for them to gain power and stay in power. But then they don't want to abolish the legislation which allows Marxists to point to inequities and claim victimhood, which is sad to see because a lot of these centrist liberal conservative types, they've already figured it out. They just have yet to put the two-piece puzzle together. They have yet to realize that the equity crap and
They're just stupid. That's what this argument is. Assuming it to be true and moving on. Let's see, providing discrimination. I mean, all this I can probably get behind if it wasn't so fucking supported by his own fucking videos.
So he talks about disparate impact in here, and so you're familiar with disparate impact, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think?
It's an inevitability. Okay. There is unintended side effects of the most well-meaning things.
Yeah,
I want to point out a lot of him citing himself is probably a way to get other people coming in via the sort of gaming cultural war route to a more political side, which I find a little asshole-ish. You want to understand these ideas to explain this DEI stuff? Watch this video by me, or just listen and believe and just assume what I'm saying is true. As you said, he's talking like his audience already believes all these ideas he's putting out. But just for, I guess, people who might stumble upon his video, who agree with the general culture war narrative, the anti-DEI, anti-woke sort of narrative, grand narrative they have come out, they can watch these videos. And which probably have a sort of culture war tuned lens to bring people into his red-pilled libertarian perspective. That's my thoughts on that. Sorry, I probably cut you off with desperate impacts.
No, I didn't. I mean, I can. I haven't. I've not done enough research on this to really have a strong opinion one or the other. There's obvious like disparate impacts.
Another problem with the center
like,
liberals who are seeking truth. They're afraid to speak on just their opinion if they don't have the facts to back them up. You can't speculate, man. Okay, based on what you do know.
Okay, so based on what I do know, I would say that there are probably some like disparate impact scenarios where you and I and everybody, like 90% of people, would agree that like, okay, this probably should be viewed as a form of de facto discrimination. Like, so if you have a company that has like a certain requirement that their employees wear their hair a certain way, and like that this way in particular has like a drastically different impact on like black employees versus white employees because of natural hairstyles, and like this.
And I've heard people bring this up. Go on.
Right. So like it's like, let's say you have a company that well gosh, you only have like 2% of your workforce is black, but you're working in an area where the population is 40% black. Why is that? And this policy is the difference, is the reason. Like, I think that they could bring, like, in theory, at least a lawsuit against the company, like someone who was denied employment working there, who was black, because of their hairstyle, and be like, well, look, this hairstyle policy is resulting in a disparate impact where black employees aren't getting hired because they can't meet the requirement or whatever, right? And
Yeah,
and so that you can see that that's a proxy for being black. It's being treated that way, or it could be being treated that way.
Okay, that particular case is sort of like how Harvard tried to skirt the sort of Civil Rights Act by sort of asking questions of the employees, and it was like stereotypical questions for Asians and whites would sort of eliminate them. It wasn't based on their skin at all, but the questions were typically the work ethics of more European WASP sort of ethical, sort of cultural sensibility, and Asian sensibility, which Asians tend to be a little bit more due diligence within their house. Same thing for a lot of more culturally pretty much white people, and they would weed people out via that. That could be considered something that could be put in place to sort of artificially get around civil rights laws. So I understand what you mean by that. But
yeah, though, like, I know that conservatives have, like, long criticized. I know, because, like, I used to be conservative or conservatarian, really, more libertarian, really. But, like, I've no conservatives have criticized disparate impact for being interpreted by the courts, at least. In certain cases, they've disagreed with them, though I don't know the details of, like, why they thought it went too far in X, Y, or Z situation.
yeah, sometimes, I mean, it's an excellent example to bring up for this particular thing. I mean, sometimes it's an unintended consequence, and sometimes you could prove it's deliberate. Like Harvard, the case against Harvard. The example you brought up, there's also many historical examples of keeping blacks out of neighborhoods via arguments like this will decrease the value. Why? Okay, just because of their skin color? Yeah.
No, it's because
They
of
enshrined
it's
in
because of their genetics and the trout and our IQ. And no, move on, jump.
Yeah,
law
yeah,
has
yeah,
been
yeah.
enshrined into United States law for a very long time now. And not only that, but most other Western countries have something similar to it for, again, a very long time now. And then often the centrist conservatives look around wondering why the neo-Marxists keep winning. And the answer is because it's currently illegal for them to lose. When the Marxists
It's not illegal. People can challenge fucking laws. There is a court system in there. People typically just go with it, okay?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
I
but
can understand their
so
perspective.
his perspective would be that, like, the conservatives and liberals, like the people who would agree with would disagree with wokeness, but agree with like equality, the Civil Rights Act, let's say, or most aspects of it in general, let's say, that they're not understanding why that the government is rigged against. Essentially, his argument is that their government is stacked against anyone who opposes wokeness, because the government
Yeah.
is wokeness because of the Civil Rights Act. But, like,
That is the logic.
but that's only because he created a definition of wokeness
Yeah.
that is based around it being based on the Civil Rights Act,
It's based on
rather
politics.
than the definition of wokeness that would be used by, like, most of the people who criticize wokeness, including especially
Yeah.
the people who are the ones criticizing wokeness on liberal grounds rather than your grounds.
Yeah. It's also about the power. The power structure is supported. He doesn't even get into the sort of individual wokeness of people and how that sort of spreads by it's sort of empathetic appeals from people. He's going from the legal perspective and not from the psychological angle, which is a fine approach to take. Except for he's wrong. It's not illegal. It's illegal both ways. You're making it like
Well, yeah.
There is plenty of examples. Like Bake the Cake, okay? Didn't they win that? And
Well,
they
they
should have
did, but
won
it
that.
was they did, but they won it on I don't want to call it a technicality because it's not.
I don't even
But
care how they won.
yeah.
Victory,
Well, they won it
okay?
because they were being discriminated against because of their religious faith. Actually, that's why they won the case.
Exactly,
So
okay? I don't agree with discrimination on any bounds, okay? And when you get into it, that gay couple was looking to do this. And that's, yeah, if what I hear about it to be true, but you don't go to a Christian bakery and demand that they fucking, it's like you don't go to a female only massage thing in Canada and expect uh, the massage parlor who cater only to females to cater for you because you're a trans woman. I have consistent standards, okay? And if there's there's some problems with that, and I probably shouldn't get into that, but yeah, consistent standards.
we could
Sometimes,
talk about that
yeah,
specifically because I don't know if I agree on the cake case. Like philosophically, I do, but like legally, I don't know if I
okay,
do. But we could talk about that
yeah.
as a whole
Legalese always
separate
is
combo.
tricky. Legalese always gets
The
very
trans
tricky.
case, though, I do agree with you there. I think that
Okay,
was yeah. Well, that was such a
probably a predator. That
yeah. That was
Jessica
a safety
Yaniv was
issue,
probably a
really, more than anything
predator
else.
of some type. I don't know. That's just how I felt. But let's move on. There's plenty of examples from both sides that fucking hurts my head.
This can just point to every collective inequity that allows them to then push for their collective guilt with the aggressive force of the state at their beck and call. And what makes the grift really effective is they don't even need to threaten litigation at this point, because Western society has been so gaslit into this style of thinking that they can simply point out the inequity.
Who have you been hanging around? Who do you believe this about? I just don't know. He's talking about maybe like 5-10 years ago. Oh God. Another thing that baffles me, which I'll get into later, is they don't take into account things change. The left of 10 years ago is not the left of now. Just like the left and right, they're constantly changing, constantly evolving. And they act like they're static. The other side is static. Everything that the left did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that is the left. The left does the same exact thing. The right, 5 years ago, how to act right. They're just hiding what they are. Yeah, some of them are, but some of them might have actually changed, evolve, grow as people. I think this is like stunting growth. This is
also too, like it's probably worth pointing out, like that, like these are also like such broad groups of people, that like you probably shouldn't get your like understanding of like what is left wing based on like the worst actors you see on the internet, or what is right wing too, right? Like you wouldn't like look at
cherry
Nick
picked,
Fuentes
low
and be like,
hanging
oh,
fruit.
right winger.
This
Yeah,
is what
of course.
bad actors do. They use low hanging fruit examples that are cherry picked to support the narrative. And we got a question, which I don't even know. Tachyon, does the sister nun Catholic birth control stance be honored if it's against their religious? I haven't even heard of that, but I saw a question.
I don't know enough about the situation, but I this is probably I think they're referring to the there was a part of, I don't know if it was Obamacare or some other law that basically made it so that certain religious organizations, or that everybody who offered health insurance to their employees would be required to offer like cover certain things under law. So if you're offering a health insurance package like to your employees or something along those lines, you have to include X, Y, or Z in your plans, right? But I believe there was both there's some private companies, I think like Hobby Lobby it might have been a different company, but I think it might have been Hobby Lobby, and also some religious organizations that had employees were saying that that it violated their religious right to not offer this as their part of their plans or something along those lines. Again, I'm not like research these cases, but essentially, am I of the view? Am I of the view? I guess that a religious organization should be required to offer, as a part of their health insurance plan to their employees, things that they believe to be immoral, like practices covering them, like birth control or whatever. It could be anything. It could be blood transfusions if you're like certain groups that don't believe in that, right?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think the
Okay.
government probably should. I don't think that's kind of a cuck answer, so I do apologize. But I don't think the government should be like. I don't think that companies, employers should be involved in healthcare really to begin with. Like, I'd rather that be something else, like any other system almost.
Yeah,
Especially,
contract out, okay? A third-party source.
yeah,
And
we
let's
shouldn't be
not get
linking
into the
healthcare to
healthcare
employers.
question. That's a whole fucking
Probably.
other bag. Yeah, I don't want to get into because I might get myself in trouble.
And the threat is simply done by implication. For instance, there was a recent sting against Valve Software for not having enough diversity, which of course by that word they mean that Valve Software has too many white guys. And a lot of people just don't understand why this move has so much power behind it. And what they really don't get about it is that it's all about freedom of association. Because when these center-right libs are giving into this style of thinking, what they don't realize is that they're actually
freedom of association. Freedom of association. Yeah, I can see what they're talking about. But if you're doing things at a massive corporate level, shouldn't you? A lot of these companies embrace these practices. And oh, God. Not going into the details of this Valve stuff. You have to look into it. And I'm not going to do it. He's just assuming.
Well, I won't either. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously, if indeed Valve is like engaging in discrimination, or rather, if people want them to do that, then that's bad. They shouldn't do that. I disagree.
I mean, yes, if they're denying minorities who apply based on they don't want to have any black people at their workplace, and that can be established factually, I would agree. Fucked off with that. If you're opening up your business to employers, you should actually not consider skin color to be a problem if you have a problem with black people. Okay,
but
like the woman who Gamergate 2 brought up. Literally, that woman's like, "Oh, we didn't hire any. No, we didn't hire white people. She worked for Sweet Baby Inc. and did Black Validate. She admitted that they didn't hire it because white people would create a negative culture for their minorities and they would be afraid. That sort of stuff is illegal. That's a case that Gamergate 2 caught something that was just like, what the fuck? If they were a group of friends, maybe she was just a dumbass and they were just a group of friends who got together who didn't discriminate, and someone brought up the white thing and she was stupid enough to just regurgitate some crap. But I shouldn't good faith that woman. That was horrible. Oh, good to know. I don't know if Jesus loves me or not.
Violating people's property rights. Going back to being pro-individual and pro-free market, and thus respecting people's property rights, when you say that person A has to associate with person B, because if they don't, that would make person B feel...
I wonder if this is the cake thing. Yeah, forcing someone, an individual, to do something, the actual law shouldn't be able to do it. But when you're a company who has certain standards and practices within the industry, and the industry has standards that they're supposed to follow, he doesn't go deep enough. There's a lot of other reasons for this force thing. Going into the Marxist thing. Oh, my boss forced me to do this job. That technically, if the individual didn't want to do that, would be actually violating the individual's right. But you sort of, when you sign up for a certain job, you sort of accept the terms and service, even if you don't read it. And you can't complain about it. Well, you can complain about it. But let's not go with edge cases there.
Bad. What you're really saying there is that it's perfectly okay for person A to be enslaved to person B, based purely on subjective hurt feels, which may or may not even really exist, which just further emphasizes how ridiculous this enslavement is. People should not be forced to serve
enslavement. Gotta love the language.
Others if they do not wish to do so. And so no individual is entitled to a job at some prestigious company purely on the grounds of collective guilt. And I see a lot of people on the center right not really quite grasping that. They don't realize that they're actually going against.
Who on the center right isn't grasping this? For someone who's talking about the individuals, is he taking the centrist route and being a little coward?
We don't. So I don't. I stepped away from it, but this picture here, if it requires the labor of another human being, then it's not a human right. Well, boy, where do our rights come from? What do you think, Leon? Sorry, what do you think, Vincent? Sorry, I don't know how to do Leon.
Leon, I feel very insulted.
Yeah.
Well, you have to negotiate. I am very much of a believer of the sort of social contract theory. You need to negotiate with the people around you, your community, what the rules are. There should be rules that should be enforced. It's really, they can be loose rules. They can be very strict rules, like religion would have strict rules. I can understand that. Something like Scientology, who will actually badmouth you when you get out. I think those are fucked up rules. And I don't think they tell you that when you join up. Anyways, but there's some rules, some societal things that I think are really bad practices within certain communities and groups. But yeah, you sort of not setting a standard creates lazy and entitled people, in my opinion.
That didn't answer my question.
Hmm?
I asked where our rights come from.
Our rights. Yeah, that's actually really hard. There should be oh, you got me in a tough one. Rights. So you're asking natural rights.
Well, I mean, you don't have to believe in natural rights. It's up to you.
Right? What about you? I will formulate my idea. I had a different tangent, but go on.
All right.
You do rights.
I would say that our rights are social abstractions. That the rights that we have are what we think we have, or essentially what we collectively discuss with each other and agree to have. So that could be negative or positive rights in that case, under my formulation of it. But they also wouldn't be like enforced by any god or higher being. It would just be entirely enforced by humans.
Yeah, I think the universe has certain. I pretty much of the same mindset. That's why I went on my. Sorry, we're on the topic of liberalism, so I went with the sort of liberal social contract theory, which posits the same thing in different words as you. But I actually think people underestimate a sort of metaphysical aspect. I'm a Gnostic, so I believe why there's not necessarily the Christian God or Muslim God, there is a sort of underlying force of the universe, of like quantum mechanics, is what actually leads me. The universe has rules, and for every action, there's a equal reaction. And I have a little bit of mysticism in it. It's not enough to believe in a almighty being. Did you ever see Futurama?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there was that one sort of being that Bender met after he played God with the little beings.
I've not seen I've only seen like some episodes.
Okay, it was a galactic entity that sort of could change the universe. He was just chilled though. He's like, oh, hey, being, like, are you God? I guess I am God. I think I have a more Eastern approach. I think too much anime and too much West Eastern media has me underlining metaphysical that's more abstract. Karma.
If you pause it, I might not reply right away. I might be eating. I'm eating a bagel, or I'm going to in a minute.
Okay. I'll just let it play. We've been on this long enough.
Against individual property rights when they refuse to get rid of the legislation that allows for the equity beatstick to be used in this way. They don't realize that the neo-Marxists are actually taking advantage of a hole in the liberal system, which innately allows the Marxists to push their ideology through the act of violating people's freedom of association that this legislation ultimately allows for. In other words, when you give evil an inch, it takes a mile, and evil will always try to pretend to be good. In this instance, they're pretending.
Oh, God. This is just so reductive.
to stand up for little guys.
So
They are pretending
circular
to care about the
logic.
poor, oppressed minority. But really, they're just coming from a place of collective envy and using collective guilt as a beat stick to force you into compliance. And it won't stop, by the way. If you give them that inch, they'll just keep.
Yeah, you let the right people, the right social collectivists do it. They'll do the same exact thing. At the end of
the
the
thing
day.
that I've like come to take away, I guess, in large part. I mean, I've taken away a lot of things from the Gamergate stuff, but I think one big one is that you can never let these like authoritarian personality type people. Not talking about Mintus in particular. I'm just talking about woke or woke right, woke left, whatever. That you just can't ever let these people have positions of power. You can never let them gain authority or power within like an organization.
Yeah,
that's just what you have to avoid that at all
they
costs.
are very creative. The left people are very creative, but they do not know how to maintain order. Okay, they don't. They let things go wild if you're too far left.
Well, no, I just mean that like because they're authoritarian people.
Yeah, they're too far. I mean, it goes both for the too far left people and the too far right people. The far right people want to like stifle all creativity or want to keep it static, perfect utopia. The far left people are just complete chaos. They'll let everything go. You need a balance, yin and yang. Again, Japanese Eastern media probably groomed me a bit. Okay, sorry about that.
Taking more and more and more until all the power is in their hands, and that is their true goal.
Also, another point about take power. People, I think leaders should actually take responsibility for what happens under them, and a lot of people cop out of that. Left, right, even center people want to pass the buck to someone else, a scapegoat. It's always someone else's fault. This is how they keep on worming along in the world. And no, I'm not arguing against libertarianism. He has some weird sort of libertarianism that I wish I understood, which eventually, when we get to it, I will try to address it as best as I can. But
equality grift that they try to pull, that they claim to believe in, that's just their pseudo-intellectual justification. They really just want you to keep giving them power. And that is what I wish a lot of normies understood when they see this kind of behavior. So what does this mean?
Who's the pseudo-intellectual now, Waves? Okay? Normies, they don't understand. He's positioning himself as an authority on this matter, and it's sort of laughable when he does it against James Lindsay, who's been more direct in a political way against the woke people. So this is why I find this just laughable. Someone like Sargon, I can understand having a more relevant argument against him, but other of these plebs, I mean, even Sargon, it's a little weird.
For the true woke right. Well, again, a lot of the discussion comes from not really understanding what wokeness is. But now that I've kind of explained that in extreme detail.
Again, they just don't understand it because you are the true intellectual. They're just pseudo.
The one thing I'll say, I think he's right. He's right that they don't. I think for a lot of these people, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but on the woke left side of things, I think for a lot of them it is really just about power. I mean, I think Gamergate revealed that more than anything else. Like, not your shield.
Yeah.
Like the way that people responded to that. It doesn't matter if you're a minority. It doesn't matter if you're a woman. It doesn't matter if you're gay or whatever, or trans or anything. All that matters is that you agree with their ideological perspective.
Yeah. Or you're cast out.
It's not really about diversity at all, or at least ostensibly it is. But for a lot of the people involved, it's about maintaining the end group and the power of
the
that
woke
group.
right is the same thing. They're trying to cast. He's going to bring it up. I might even go over it. He's like, James Lindsay's the real woke. What I consider woke light. What the fuck is woke light? Okay. This seems to be pseudo-intellectual bullshit, in my opinion.
For the rest of this video, I'd like to focus on a specific example, which is this explanation of what the woke right is from James Lindsay on America Uncovered. And in it, he gets a few things correct. For example, it is true that there is a victims-oppressor dichotomy within wokeness. That's mainly where the collectivist envy against the successful people comes from, and how they justify the collective guilt.
And he's adding all these sort of caveats in there, okay? Things that maybe his audience believes. Maybe he believes, but are they true? I mean, I can see the argument for his argument here. Okay, I can believe it. It's believable. But collectivists aren't that simple. A lot of infighting. And we saw a little bit in Goonergate saga recently, which is probably after we do this, we'll at least touch base on.
They claim that those people who have been successful are oppressing the people who have not been successful, and that those people are therefore victims of the oppressors, and that woke ideology stems from that kind of faulty reasoning. To that extent, James Lindsay is right. However, much of else what he has to say really is very much off the mark. Mainly, he mistakes symptoms of woke ideology for woke ideology itself, or he's looking at a lot of patterns of behavior that a lot of the far left neo-Marxists partake in, and confusing those behaviors for wokeness itself, which again is a very big problem because it goes back to saying everything I don't like is wokeness, just like a lot of far lefties like to say.
He goes into a circular logic thing, and then he's like, try to do a comparison with James Lindsay. Yeah, he's like one of these far lefties. He's doing the same thing.
Well, also, everything I don't like is wokeness, but then his definition of wokeness is different from both of our definitions for sure. But
yeah,
and James's definition, and like he seems to be like using his own definition as well. Like
it's subjective. It's a subjective definition.
Everything
it's a
is
modern
woke.
construct.
The Civil Rights Act is woke. Equality is woke.
Yeah, generally that's what he's saying. Equality is woke. I agree. There's some extremes that definitely take it to an absurd degree, as Timon brought up. Yeah, somewhere they tend to go. I said it myself. Lefties tend to go too wild, too far, and that ends up causing a lot of them to infight with each other. Rightoids typically band together. That sort of Goonergate thing, it happened. It's done. Not seeing constant infighting between people, except for some dipshits. They're like, this fighting is stupid. Okay, let's stop it, and they pretty much did. So you got to respect that quality at least.
Say that everything they don't like is literally bad mustache man. And you really don't want to do that. So the first thing he's wrong on is thinking that cancel culture is wokeness. Cancel culture is not really wokeness. In fact, when people on the right do it, it's really usually just physical removal. It's just freedom of association being used to oust someone who they view as being cringe.
Just cringe? No, literally trying to get people fired. How's that different? How's it different? I've seen it happen. Literally try to get people banned off of social media. I saw that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw Rob Noor like a few days ago. I've talked with Rob. I didn't think he was going to be like anti-free speech, but it seemed like he was trying to basically cancel Destiny by trying to like contact politicians that he's been interacting with and being like, "Oh, you have to condemn Destiny," and or saying like, "Do you condemn him?" Essentially, which is essentially the same thing.
Yeah, he's inching that way. I know of Rob Noor. I think he's a decent debater. I have some respect for him, but if that's the case, it's definitely going in the wrong way. Maybe it's peer pressure.
I criticized him on it. He didn't even reply to my tweet. So I don't know if maybe he even. Yeah, I don't. Maybe he's hopefully examining where his life recently and deciding that he doesn't want to be that kind of person. I hope that's the choice he decides to make, but we'll see, huh?
Yeah. Depends on what sort of spaces he's getting in. Peer pressure is a thing, both left and right, a powerful force. Ostracize. People are afraid of getting ousted from their group. Cancel culture, again, another social construct, but the sort of spirit behind it does exist.
Yeah, well, to be clear, I don't want to misrepresent him. He said, I don't think he said condemn, but he's like, what do you think of him making the joke on Twitter about the Trump assassination attempt?
It's lame. It's very fucking lame of Rob Noor to do that.
Yeah, he sent it to multiple politicians. It's like, it's not just like one time, like, oh, what do you think? Which even that is too much, I think. But it's clear, that what he was trying to do, I think. And he wants a little bit of plausibility.
Yeah, definitely seems like a sneaky, cringe way to hint. And a lot of people do that. It's really cringe. Oh, God. Yeah. Just that's view as cringe. Okay, no, them doing the shit is cringe at the very best, and at the very worst, consistently going after a person, moralizing. The same problem I have with Grums and anyone who follows the sort of demonization of the left. I don't like their ideas. I think they're crap. But I follow tolerance. I'm not going to call them evil. I'm not going to lie about them to get people to just listen and believe to me. Didn't we learn that with Me Too? You don't demonize people and just put all your faith into these people. Why didn't the right learn that? I'm sure many people did. Kyle Rittenhouse. If they didn't have the evidence on his side, he could have been convicted. But they had the evidence to back it up. And I'm glad for that. And that's last good thing Destiny did. He defended Kyle Rittenhouse's right to protect himself.
What do you think of Kyle Rittenhouse's comments during the election where he talked about how he didn't support Trump and then was criticized over it?
He was bullied back in the line. Yeah. I thought that was bullshit.
Joe Rogan too. Yeah. Well, I is that harassment in your view? Or is that just like people on
That's
Twitter?
Peer pressure, okay? That there is a threat. With Joe Rogan, I don't think he would have given a damn. And I don't think he give a damn. Kyle Rittenhouse is a little bit different. He's a kid. He's still he's not a kid anymore. He's becoming an adult. But the left demonized him. So he went into the right wing. And I still think he has good intent. Okay, but he's still gonna peer pressured into falling into line with what the right narrative is going to be at the end of the day.
He's not Joe Rogan. His entire life of fame and fortune,
it was shattered.
The world is because of conservatism. Is because they're the ones who mostly had his back.
And I do believe he has principles, but there's only so far in our society that the principles can take you. There's only so much pushback you can give sometimes. There's a difference between someone young like Kyle Rittenhouse, who had such threat, and Joe Rogan, who frankly doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think honestly, I think you should always do the right thing. So I don't think Kyle should have caved in. If his genuine belief is that Trump is quite bad, then he should stick with his guns. And that goes for anyone else in these situations too. I think you can see the way I've handled the Brianna Wu situation. Brianna Wu is quite an immoral person in many ways. She does a lot of horrible things to other people. And maybe I've been too soft on her. I probably have been. But I've tried to give her a chance.
You should watch Queeman going after her ass.
Oh, yeah. Well,
normally I don't like Queeman's attitude, but with Brianna Wu and Connor, with that counterpoint, I'm justified.
Well, Connor's a little bit different. And to be clear, he endorsed the Kickstarter. So there's a conflict of interest there possibly. But
okay, Connor, let's drop it. Yeah. Okay.
But he had me on literally 4 days ago or whatever. It was 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago. He had me on to promote the Kickstarter campaign against Brianna Wu's wishes.
Okay, very nice.
So that people could see that, okay, look, we all know Brianna's Gamergate story. He wanted to give me a chance to tell my story too, which I appreciate. I think that that's good. I think that he made the right call.
I think he has good principles. I just think he has some problems here and there, okay, with defending Brianna.
Well, what he wants, I think, and I'm not him. I can't speak for him, but I think what he wants is, yes, he wants to continue his successful podcast with Brianna, but I think he wants to try and push Brianna into a more honest direction. And so I think what he's trying to do is trying to bring her into, but it's not just her, right? But I think in general, I think his idea is that we need to have a lot more forgiveness, and we should also promote.
Yeah, and I can agree with that.
We need to forgive each other.
And it's just hard to deal with him so hard sweeping for a couple of people like Brianna. And, I think he swept for Wick also.
What's your issue with Wick?
Nothing in particular, just a sort of progressive disclosure and a couple of things here. I don't have anything personally against Wick.
Okay.
It's just a lot of other people do. I wouldn't go too hard on him because he's not really that rich of a guy, and I take those things into consideration. But
Yeah, I generally I think Wick is probably one of like the more honest content creators out there when it comes to stuff. I know that I know the
Go on.
tooth situation. Don't worry, I know. Uh, what do you think about the tooth situation? Let's just move on.
Let's move on. Sorry.
And yes, it's true that far-left woke scolds do this as well. However, there's a slight difference, which is that cancel culture on the left usually comes with that implication of that disparate impact beat stick. When lefties partake in cancel culture, it's usually them falsely accusing someone of discrimination, such as accusing a content creator of creating hateful or otherwise bigoted content,
But they're not wrong. Hateful and bigoted content is subjective, dude. Okay? This is the problem with. They are correct in their own perspective, from their own standpoint theory, and you're using your
But
own.
is bigoted is bigotry a subjective thing?
You're actually right. Bigotry is just so broad, you can easily say it. Yeah. Their content is bigoted by the very definition of bigoted.
Well,
but
I don't like bigotry. Like, what bigotry is like intolerance towards others, right? Isn't that like essentially what it is?
yeah, it's rather broad.
Yeah. So, but like that is like objective, right? Like you could isn't that an objective thing? You
Sorry,
measure that?
hateful. Hateful
Hateful's
can be.
not.
Okay. Hateful is a really hard thing. Okay. Sometimes you need someone to admit their hatred. And some people do. But they're like, fine. They skirt the sort of bigotry, obstinately, unreasonably attached to a belief, opinion, or faction in a particular prejudice against or antagonistic against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular group. It's just such a broad definition if you want to get into the brass tacks of bigoted, that a lot of people. We could be bigoted against Wave's red pill libertarianism here. We could be considered bigoted against him. Just like the term grooming is not necessarily a sexual thing. A sort of teacher will groom their apprentice to learn the job. Maybe I should avoid using these broad terms, though. This is why sometimes using your personal definition is good, but not understanding the perspective of other individuals and just assuming, casting like Waves is doing here, I think is violating consent. You know, he's given his perspective. Would he willing to go to a lefty and be like, okay, what's your views on this? We know you would willing to do it. You're probably too eager to get people's personal perspective, but you also have an objective value that you'll hold some people to, correct?
Yeah, or at least I'll try to hold people to their own standards, and I'll also like promote my own too, I guess, to some extent. But I do have a taking all comers approach. I think that's well, you kind of do too, Vincent. Like you're willing to talk with a lot of the anti-SJW people and the SJW people, though they don't really talk to you, do they?
Well, technically, I am anti-SJW. I'm against identity politics. I'm against people being bitches and hiding behind people, minority, anyone as their shield. I'm against a lot of bad practices. Okay, but I personally think you should be able to talk it out. If they don't want to talk or negotiations break down because of incompatibility in communications, understandable. But I at least want to make the attempt. Okay, the attempt to understand other people, even if you fail, I think that's important.
I agree. We need more conversations.
Yeah, and tribalistic nature is just making it harder. Sad.
which again is ironic because woke ideology actually is bigoted. It's just only bigoted against the groups that they view as historically advantaged, and then attempting to get them banned from big tech or something like that. And so they kind of mass flag and mass report you in an attempt to get you banned or shadow banned, or if you have enough followers, they'll demonetize.
So it's power plus the bigotry of these leftists, which seems to make them the worst ones. I keep hearing this over and over again. Like, so what if we do this? We don't have the power. A lot of these people fall in, I don't know if it's consciously or unconsciously, that they use the P plus P, and they assign some sort of power to all these lefties. And yeah, some of them do have power, more power than others, but some of them are just shitter lefty developers that I see them going after and act like they have so much power because they have a narrative. All lefties are respected by all the corporations. And how true is that, Holden? How many people have been canceled?
Well, and of course, though, but like power plus. So if his definition of woke, then it's going to be like power plus diversity or power plus identity politics.
That is the implication by using the DEI, which is a corporate sort of institute. He's sort of boxing
he's talking about
himself
harassment here too, right? He's talking about like, they're going to try and demonetize you and mass flag you. So like they're wielding power against people, including apparently even Mintis himself.
Tiamon really has a hate boner for Dev, just to let you know if he's
Does
in chat.
Tiamon believe, like Dev, that the blank or the can be saved? I'm not sure what D is.
The leftist, I guess.
I mean, like, what do you mean, like, can they be saved? Like, I think that, like, are these people going to be pushed? Are we going to push them off a cliff? Or, obviously not. They're still going to be alive in 5 years, right? You're still going to have your Hassan Pikers of the world, or maybe not him. Maybe he gets banned.
At least he can be bullied. Okay, we've learned. We can bully Hassan.
Maybe you don't have like Hassan per se, but you will have like people in the world who have like a more progressive politics. Now that could take like multiple different forms. Like that could even be like somewhat like more positive, like social democracy, where you want to. But that's a different like ideological perspective. But yeah, that's fine. Like you could be a social democrat and like support healthcare. Like I'm pretty much there on that. Even as more like
lefties will never be based or cool, but they can be reasoned with on some issues. I think.
They you just gotta. I think we're gonna see people drop the woke shit. Just make sure that the woke shit goes away and the America bad shit. But now the fucking the woke right people, if you want to call them that, like the American conservatives are against America too. They're all they're all America bad. We need to we need to invade. Yeah, we need to annex Greenland and the Panama Canal and Canada, but like Ukraine is bad. Like Russia's the good guy, but like Denmark's the bad guy.
Yeah,
like I don't know, man. We're living in crazy fucking times. It's nuts.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah,
ties you, which is really just another form of shadow banning. Due to how the algorithm works, it tends to push monetized content up the search algorithm. So as far as the message goes, it's the same thing. That's kind of the high-tech version of cancel culture today. And that again kind of comes with that implication of that beat stick. They're implying to the big tech company that if they allow this kind of speech on their platform,
a very narrow definition of cancel culture that he's using again. Another very narrow.
He doesn't know what happened to Rittenhouse to be a form of cancel culture, though. Or at least he didn't say Rittenhouse specifically, but he talked about how it's different when the right does it.
Oh yeah, got it.
So like that's not cancel culture, but demonetization is. I mean, like presumably they both would be.
There was social pressure put on Rittenhouse in that moment to bend the knee and go with the crowd. Joe Rogan. When I said Joe Rogan doesn't give a fuck, I think Joe Rogan has very decent. He's a little bit open, wild, but he also has his little Jamie, I think, to fact check some things to try to keep some sense of objectivity. I can respect it. I'm sure he makes plenty of mistakes here and there. But yeah.
understand, because a lot of time far left Marxists will pretend to use
This is also why he's not using any examples, I think, except for James Lindsay. That's the only example here.
it's a private company argument, saying that a private platform can do whatever they want. But the thing is,
And didn't he start this all off by talking about James Lindsay? What's with this fucking sort of pivot about leftists again? Oh, I think I know what it is. Let me not be bad faith and put it out there.
is they don't actually believe that. They don't actually believe in freedom of association. And you can clearly see that because their false flags and false reports partially come from a place of power dynamics which denies freedom of association. If they actually believe that private platforms should be able to do whatever they want, they would be against that legislation as well, which of course they're not. However, canceling when it comes from the right usually does not come in the form of them using shady tactics to try and deplatform someone. Usually it instead comes in the form of
Can you
you
pause
being...
it?
Yeah,
Didn't this video come out like literally like just as we have TikTok ban being heard at the Supreme Court too?
It was a couple days ago.
Yeah, but like, like
2
this is like an
days.
ongoing, like a very recent phenomenon.
See, the TikTok bans that went through, I didn't see that. Okay.
I think that's like I think that has bipartisan support. Technically, it's not like a one side versus the other.
Well, I have a bias against China, and their influence on TikTok definitely concerns me. Maybe it's unfounded concern with TikTok, but yeah, you're not going to hear me.
We should force China to tear down, Mr. Xi Jinping, tear down that firewall.
The Great
Freedom
Wall.
of information.
It's going to take
both
forever. The internet. In the memification of this, I can see rhetorically why this is effective, but it's purely and utterly fluff. And I'm gonna probably
this whole video. I was like, I was like so excited.
Not the whole video, but he's preaching to the choir about certain aspects I can agree with leftists. Okay, there's enough things that I can agree on that I'm not going to just outright dismiss it. But whew.
Yeah, when I saw you were doing this stream about the woke left, the woke right, I'm like, this could be a great, interesting discussion. I can't wait to watch the video. I think it'll be an interesting, but it's so surface level the whole time. He doesn't give in examples, or he doesn't give like a deep philosophical understanding of like why he's defining it this way, why he picked this definition, and trying to like make his case to the audience. I'm not sure why he made the video. Like it just doesn't seem like it would convince anyone.
Okay, this is one of these mask off things like Andy Pan. No, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. For anyone who looks at it critically, yeah, you're gonna become a little weird. Okay, you're gonna find red flags all over the place.
Maliciousness instead of it just being that he was lazy and incompetent.
Well, he probably would call us just idiot pseudo intellectuals. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't make.
Well, we are, so
Of course, I'm actually below an intellectual. I'm rough and tough, crappy ass, someone who doesn't even care. I mean, I care about my values and trying to get things across, but I'm not willing to go with the grand narrative just to get views and get popular to push my brand of politics, which I don't even want to push on people. My politics is freedom. Okay. People make decisions, research things properly, and being informed, but most people don't want that. Too much work, I guess.
True.
That is too true.
Dogpiled and told by thousands of people why you're wrong. So it's usually not really the same thing. It's a similar behavior, but it is not the thing itself. It is not woke ideology itself. The active cancel culture is
because it's not identical. It can't be woke.
Usually more of an act that only works if you have some form of power on your side. And so in this way, the establishment right is
only
some sort of power on your side.
Remember what I said.
Power plus privilege.
Yeah, but
sorry, I stole your thunder. Go.
No, you said exactly what I like. This is why I led up to it. Yes, only works when you have power on your side. You're using P plus P. But this would be power plus bigotry equals cancel culture. Okay, it was slightly different. Slightly different. But it's still the same idea. You need power for it to have any weight. No, you can be racist on an individual level. They're Oh God.
Well, he
let me
wouldn't
not
have a
get into-
problem with that, though, presumably, because it would just be freedom of association. Maybe on a personal level, he might oppose it, but on a societal level,
okay.
it would just be freedom of association, right?
This is why he has a problem with Civil Rights Act. It's not that it was needed at that certain time frame. Something that a lot of leftists don't understand. That as things change, norms change. What I seen people, I went over this Buffy video, which I thought was like this aged poorly. I hate that is aged poorly. Comparison to everything else in that era, how well was the representation there? Pretty good, but it could age poor. Yeah, you're not considering the context of when it was made. You're trying to put your own values onto
I saw your video, by the
someone
way.
else. Yeah.
I saw most of it. I didn't catch like the last 5 minutes, but yeah.
Most of the end of
was-
my
it was
videos
interesting.
is rambling.
It was
Yeah, I
interesting.
take interesting approaches to that. I think I was convinced to swing a little bit left because I've been swinging too hard right. I'm like, I can find a couple things that I can disagree with, and those are the one. Yeah, let me not get into it. Glad you found it interesting. Thought provoking is what I go for.
Center-right liberals, they are the ones who are ironically more in a position where they are able to partake in cancel culture. And you will in fact often see this. A lot of times the center-right establishment right will use their power to either kick out the dissident right or the libertarian right or some other right wing.
Yeah.
I don't think
would
that
like-
that's true. Well, like because of
Yeah,
Trump,
examples.
I feel like if you're a Republican, and Trump goes against you, your time in the party may very well be numbered.
Yep. Okay, he's God Emperor. Okay, God Emperor Trump. That's a meme. That's practically reality. For a while, I was thinking about DeSantis as a good candidate, but the whole thing about suing Disney and stuff was sort of like, oh God, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah.
That was, I think, a violation of free speech.
Yeah.
Who don't currently control as much state power as they do. So that take from Lindsay just kind of seems to stem from a poor understanding of what the difference is between cancel culture and physical removal. At least not at
Yeah, pseudo-intellectual, a mathematical professor, college educated. He is the one who doesn't understand this.
that take from Lindsay just kind of seems to stem from a poor understanding of what the difference is between cancel culture and physical removal, at least not in a principled, consistent way. And this seems to stem from the fact that James Lindsay only kind of understands what wokeness is. He seems to
He only kind of understands what it is. His whole channel is dedicated to explaining the ideas behind what I just don't know how pseudo-intellectual this comes off as.
Well, because he's using a different definition of wokeness. That's why. And he thinks his
Yeah.
definition is right. Everyone else's definition is wrong. Which, like, to be clear, like, is what James is doing too, right? It's just, except I probably agree more with James.
No, he's actually honest that he's using this as a power play. He's very honest. Be like, I was trying to think of an effective rhetorical strategy. It worked well with the woke. I've been trying to figure out another way, but I just doing the same thing again. See if it gets the same results. And kind of, you're losing some people. I agree.
Well, I would. The only reason I guess I would say that is because I don't know if woke has like a real definition that everyone
He
can
really
agree
doesn't.
on. I don't.
I mean, I
But,
like my
like-
simple thing: identity politics plus power politics. Simplest way to go about it. It creates the grand narrative of whatever woke party you have. And okay, I understand what you're saying. I
No, I mean,
go
I think it can be like I could give you a definition. I think I did earlier, even like give a brief one, and you've given one as well. But I don't know if people just use it as a pejorative essentially. So I don't know.
different
But like there
people
is a
use it
real
different
thing
ways.
underneath it all. There is a real thing
Yes.
underneath it all that is a real phenomenon that I think is worthy of critique.
And I'm not even saying woke is necessarily bad. It's something I heavily disagree with because it sort of disregards truth and individualism typically. Because he's right. It is woke is typically collectivist in nature, or at least seemingly so. people can have their own sort of individual interpretation of woke, obviously, since he has his own little special definition that I've never heard anyone use before. Oh, so funny. He's definitely a postmodernist thinker. Okay. But I'm almost to the point.
Find it in a video as believing that there is a oppressor-based structure to social reality. He doesn't put enough emphasis on the collectivist element, nor does he really call out the fallacies of that collectivist brain.
Oh, he didn't bring this up, but I'm sure he would agree with it, the collectivist aspect. But he didn't in this 3-minute clip. Oh, I got the wrong sort of clip.
Right. And especially he fails to call out the fallacies of egalitarian thinking. And without that, you kind of...
The fallacies. Bring up the fallacies. What is the fallacies? Oh, you have to watch his other video.
It's only a 25-minute video. Okay, we're not gonna jump into too much more here. Okay.
Miss the element of collective envy that wokeness truly comes from. It's kind of missing that it's all just a pseudo-intellectual justification for that type of disdain. And it absolutely has quite a bit to do with Marxism, because he also makes the claim that...
So no one... You copied his definition to see if they match any dictionaries on Google. I could not find. God, that is bad. I didn't even think of doing that shit. That is
like
weird.
If he wants to go this route, all he has to do is be like, hey, look, this is my personal definition, and then explain, here's why I think this is better than the way some other people have used the term. And like give out like 3 or 4 criteria, like this is why this is a better definition. And then okay. For the sake of argument, we can run with it. But like I don't think we're just going to accept it on face value.
Some people will, because it goes with the narrative. The grand narrative.
That it has nothing to do with Marxism. In fact, wokeness is really just the logical conclusion of Marxist thought. Marxist thought does the same thing with class envy and class collective guilt, whereas...
This is what's so fucked up. It's neo-Marxism that we're dealing with now. Okay, very clearly neo-Marxist. Let me take a quick tangent. Okay, so critical theory, you at least know that much, right?
I mean, I'm aware of it. I'm not like an expert.
I've actually looked into it. I'm not going to take any intellectual route because it's really not my style. But yeah, critical theory, Frankfurt School. So take a real quick look through that. Establishing that Frankfurt School, blah blah blah. Here's what I want to just go over real quick. The Frankfurt theorists proposed a existing social theory was unable to explain the turbulent political factionism and reactionary politics such as Nazism. And this is just Wikipedia, so take this with a grain of salt. This is something that I want to bring up. Critical theory of the Frankfurt School was also critical of Marxist-Leninism as a philosophy. My brain is falling apart. Inflexible system. So the critical theory, which most of what's referred to as neo-Marxism comes from, actually was critical of Marxism. Yes, they sort of take the sort of roots from this. And yeah.
Is it worth spending time to investigate like this stuff, the critical race stuff, or critical theory and stuff like that, Frankfurt School, or is it not really worth the time to try and understand it at all?
We're so far along. I don't know. This is why I'm really annoyed by all these post-liberalism trying to get into the historical examples. Probably not. What critical, all this intersectional, all these theories have evolved so far from their roots. It's good to know the roots, I guess, if you have time, know where this stuff came from. I'm just using this as a own against them. I'm just going to be very blatant about this. I'm using this as a own. It's not the logical conclusion. These were people who had criticism of Lenin Marxism and wanted to sort of fix it. And some of the worst stuff came out of it. But you shouldn't believe Wikipedia for anything. I think
True.
I just used it as a sort of backup for what I already knew. I already knew critical theory was sort of started because the dissenting people of Marxism saw the flaws of Marxism in the beginning, but they liked the idea, so they tried to find ways to work it in better. And this is what we have. We are so far along. It's a mutate. It's like a virus. If it woke is a mind virus and it came from critical theory of the Frankfurt School, it's been practically 100 years since that was formulated. Nothing like what it was in the beginning. So looking into all these philosophers, I think, and trying to understand what they were trying to do and what their ideas were, incredibly flawed, because you're just missing the mark, really. In my opinion, that is. It's good to know where something came from always, but
yeah, if I
so
want
much.
to, I do probably want to spend more time focused on philosophy, but I should probably focus on more like liberal philosophy to start off with, kind of, and then maybe
Yeah,
go
and
from
follow
there.
it through. I had a friend, Andrew Clark, who had a whole series on what was it? Fucking Mills? Yeah, John Stuart Mills. I thought that was pretty good. Of course, it didn't really get any views, but I found it interesting to explore his ideas. Okay. Is it like liberalism nowadays? No. Liberalism is weird. It would need to be reformed. I do agree with post-liberalists that liberalism does need to catch up, but that's everything. I think Marxism and communism is flawed from the start. I could be wrong. I'll admit that. All those ideas I think are complete garbage, but that's my opinion. Anything to add before we wrap up just this video and what I want to get into? Or
American liberal democracy is the best. Fuck fascism. Fuck communism. Fuck revolutionary socialism.
It is actually.
But yeah, we can improve it.
It
too,
is
yes.
actually it's actually the worst, except for everything else.
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. But no, but we should. But we say I don't know if it, like, when you say that we need to like reform it or change it, like what do you mean? Because what do you mean specifically?
Update it for the sort of context or this how society has evolved. Because philosophy should match the era we're in. It should catch up. It should take into account the reality we live in. Because the philosophers of the past, they might have been wise men in their era, but they were sort of dealing with their circumstances. Since the circumstances of the world, I mean, there is some philosophy that I still like. There's still some philosophy I think still holds some relevant, but that's mainly in the psychological department, because people's psychological makeup might have evolved, but I think that goes at a slower pace. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Political philosophy, I think, going back to older political philosophy, I think it's good to have that background of where these ideas came from, but to think it's those century-old ideas reflect how they morphed over the years, I think that's incredibly flawed.
That's probably true.
Probably. I don't quote me on that. I'm not an intellectual or even pseudo-intellectual.
Well, I mean, like just look at how the words like conservative, how that word has like completely different connotations just from when I was growing up, and probably when you're growing up too, right?
Yeah, probably. It's changed and morphed. Fortunately, everything is technically social contract, but we still need to have a reality that most people can agree on. Crazy people can have their own reality. Maybe we should give them their own island. That's my most authoritarian thought. Okay. They should have their own island set aside for their weird.
Though, you want to watch something else after this? I probably won't. It's almost midnight where I'm at, so I'll probably leave. But you can obviously you keep going if you want.
Yeah. Okay,
The
let me
woke
just get to
ideology,
my
which
last
you can often
point.
call just neo-Marxist ideology, simply takes that and applies it to all aspects of identity, while keeping the same thing of blaming it all on the group that is viewed as successful, which they construe as the group that is advantaged. Lindsay also just completely gets wrong what Hans Hermann Hoppe means about what Marx gets right. If you actually listen to the lecture from Hans Hermann Hoppe on what Karl Marx gets right, it's actually all about how Marx's collectivist ideas are all completely stupid, and how Marx's philosophy completely misses the concept of time preferences, and thus Marx ended up creating a fake victim class, which distracted from the people who were actually, as individuals, committing real property rights crimes.
Real victims, and this is where I want to take the tangent on this. I'll let you go. After I go over this, I'll let you go. You're not my slave. Slavery's bad. I just want to go over this.
Woke ideology.
This is what triggered waves here. This really triggered waves.
They're big fans of Hans Hermann Hoppe, who was.
Oh no, I have 2 timestamps here.
Way out of this. What are you going to do?
Stop doing it. Okay, real quick, just a couple of minutes. We'll listen to it unprompted, just to get the whole Lindsay experience. This is what he just cited. It seems like what he cited.
They think that pursuing and grabbing and wielding power is absolutely necessary. And despite the fact, one of their biggest claims for the last several years, because these have been around for several years, has been, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. What are you going to do? Vote harder. And then allegedly, we just had this victory where we actually did vote harder and got our way out of it. So their prediction about how things work didn't seem to work out exactly right. But so that's what they are. But like I said, they've been around for a few years. What they've done is they've taken up with the sort of, they consider them forbidden right-wing philosophers, not necessarily traditional conservatives, largely people like Thomas Carlyle, who's considered the father of both Maoism and the father of fascism. They take up with people like Carl Schmitt, who was the crown jurist of the Third Reich, who came up with a variety of political philosophies about the absolute sovereignty of the executive and the idea that all politics comes down to a violent conflict between friend and enemy. If that sounds a lot like how the Chinese use it, that's because the Chinese adopted all of Schmitt.
Yeah, these sound all horrible. I can't verify it, but Waves does not deny any of this other stuff. Just point that out real quick.
In the 1980s or earlier, and have been explicitly Schmittian for a long time. I mean, they actually, you can look that up. CCP's actual political philosophy is Schmitt attached to what was either Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping thought. So like that's their guy. They've got, like I said, Alistair McIntyre, who's like, Marx is right, except about his conclusions, because Marx wanted to maintain the fruits of modernity. But the fact is that modernism itself is a problem. So Marx's critique can be salvaged and retooled to destroy modernism and classical liberalism.
Yeah, throw away the Enlightenment values of modernism. I agree, has some problems.
Completely, but Marx was essentially right. This is one of their core philosophers. They've taken up with the fascist philosopher Julius Evola. So these are the kind of guys that they're talking. They're big fans of Hans Hermann Hoppe, who was also very keen on Marxist thought and Marxist methods, although to different conclusions. Some of them flirt with Hitler, who explicitly said that he was using Marxist methods.
That's it. That's what Waves got triggered over, it seems like.
The one specific, that's the only part of it he criticized, essentially?
Yeah. He got that totally wrong about Hoppe. Apparently. Who definitely advocated for democracy's bad. We should go back to a monarchy. Even though that idea is completely absurd to me. That's what I got from
me too. I don't know enough about like Franz Hoppe or like anything about his philosophy at all. So
I tried to do quick Cliff Notes research again. In my little tweet, I'm like, yeah, I don't think Dev's going to come on, but it doesn't hurt to ask. He might be able to fill me in about the wonderful nature of Hans Hopperty. Anyone who advocating to go back to a monarchy, I think, is just stuck in the past. Using historical examples and trying to apply it to society today just seems outright absurd.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and how are you going to like defeat the woke mind virus?
It has nothing to do with the woke mind virus.
No, true. You're right. It doesn't. But in addition to that, like if you're a monarchist and your ideology is so unpopular.
Well, I don't know if Waves is a monarchist, but obviously the guy he's standing for, who got triggered over Lindsay saying the dissident right are fans of, who only went into it real quick. Yeah.
So he's not a monarchist then?
I don't know. I haven't done enough research. I'm not going to say anything about Hoppe.
Fair enough.
I just know that the stuff that I did skim over just to get a brief Cliff Notes understanding is, yeah, he definitely advocated democracy bad, America bad with the democracy, someplace like, I guess, Saudi Arabia. I looked into who actually still has a absolute monarchist nation. Like, it's the Middle East, it's the Muslims, it's the Muslim nations that still have the fucking monarchists.
Hey, I think
Absolute.
one of those. I think is it Lesotho or is it Eswatini? One of them has like an absolute monarchy too, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to look up. I'm like, okay, they keep on advocating for monarchy, but they have libertarian monarchy. I don't even know what the fuck that is. Oh God, I don't want to know if I want to know what libertarian monarchy is. Probably just anarchy under a powerful person.
Well, I think it is Swaziland, Eswatini, but I think a libertarian, like if you want to like, I don't know a huge amount about their philosophy. I think their understanding though is basically that democracy is always going to fail because people are going to vote for things that they perceive to be in their interest. And so therefore it's best to have like a monarch, a single like titular figure at the top who doesn't ever do anything, or like who has like a night watchman state, right? Where all they ever do is they prevent people's negative rights from being violated. They protect property and they stop violent crime, right? That's about it. Maybe a military too. And that's all they do. They don't have a healthcare, they don't have libraries or schools and stuff like that, right? Those are all private sector stuff. And so the monarch, because he's not elected, he doesn't have to answer to the people, at least directly through elections or anything like that.
So he'll
He has
treat
the
people
stability.
better with absolute power.
Or he has the stability. He has the stability, right? Or she has the stability to rule over society without having to answer to like the democratic will, which is the democratic will is what like hurts libertarianism, I guess you could say, because people seem to vote for the government doing stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
Because they seem to think sometimes it's a good idea, and like libertarians
because
don't
you
like.
because
So the
you
monarch
suck and
stops it.
can't pursue people your opinions in the market a free place. Just because you suck at convincing people, because everyone's playing unfair. I'm guessing they're just going to start playing unfair because everyone else is lying. Why not them?
Right, they should come up with better ideas. Like I don't know, like maybe like not the whole monarchy thing. Well, because so, but they're assuming too. Like I feel like you have to assume that like you have to trust the monarch to like a high degree to not
Yeah,
end up abusing his power.
I'm letting this play in the background if you want to see it. This is Cliff Note. This is AI, so it's probably better not listening to it. But yeah, Hoppe highlights the concept of time preference in his critique. And what I believe that is like the sort of time preference is like, WASP sensibilities. You got up and you did stuff like the farmer. Okay. They get up in the morning, they work until they have good Protestant work ethics. That's my concept, is why Western society is so successful, is because of our sort of time preferences.
Well,
And I almost want to
go ahead.
go on.
Sorry, I want to wrap things up. It's midnight
Yeah.
for me, at least.
Outro yourself.
Hey, I'm Techie. I'm Blue. Thanks for having me on, Vincent. If you want to talk again sometime, absolutely. Just let me know. I'm happy to do panels or discussions like this.
Panels.
Great panel.
I would like to get a fucking panel together, but it takes
You
forever
can do
to
it.
get
You gotta put yourself out there more, man. You gotta. It's talk to.
But I
Whitney, see
hate
what she
most
does.
people, okay? I
He's
hate
able to get all
listening to
those
some
people.
whiny ass people. Okay. Yeah, I invite people on. If they come, they come. Open panel, guys. You just afraid to lose to my lame ass? I'm just not understanding why people are afraid to come and discuss these ideas. Okay, make me look like a clown if you want. Okay, I don't understand why everyone's so afraid.
I understand too. It's tough out there to get people too sometimes. So I've run panels and it's really hit or miss. It depends
I
on
just
the
got
topic.
tired. I've organized plenty of panels and it's been difficult as all hell at the level and the topics I want to talk about.
Yeah.
They're just not very they're not very popular. People don't want to talk about the subject. Why? Everyone wants to talk about the same exact things that is trending, and that just seems boring to me. Okay, I'd like to do new ideas from new perspectives, and I'm not afraid to be wrong. Okay, I'll correct myself later if I'm found out to be wrong on something, but you sort of have to make an argument to me of why it's worthwhile to be wrong. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I interrupted your stuff.
No, you're fine. I was just
You're-
saying goodbye, and if people want to check out my work, they can find me Tacky on Blue on YouTube, Twitch, or Kick, and of course, check out. I've got 2 upcoming books: The People of Gamergate Volume 1 coming out in a couple months here, and Champions of Alanthea coming out at some point, either this year or next. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Vincent. You have a great night.
Sure thing. Take care. Have a good night. I'm gonna go over Dev. Is the resident Dev hater still around? Timon, you want to come on? Message me. Okay. I know I asked G Coops if he wanted to come on, but he says his mic sucks. He doesn't want to act like CV. So at the end of the day,
that are more beneficial in the long run.
Is craptastic.
Monarchs have a vested interest in preserving the value of their realm for future generations.
Oh God, this is
one of the key points Hoppe makes
is a comparison between private property and public property. I bet you can take a look at this. There's several things I have in this playlist. I got a lot of crap in here I'm not going to go over, but let's get into the dev stuff, because there are certain points in here that I want to bounce off of. So we went over Minch's Wit. I always have trouble trying to figure out how I should say these fucking names, stupid names on the internet. I don't know why people don't just use normal names, but that's just me. So, and to say he doesn't understand cancel culture. James Lindsay, Peter, a lot of people in academia got canceled around him. He's probably the one who has to do it at all. And I am just sort of oh yeah, while I'm waiting, there's a certain point. This is one of these dissident right people.
Part of oil.
And am I the right one? James Lindsay.
Now we've got this new wave of
no, here's the one I wanted. So this guy is trying to tell James Lindsay what books he should read. I don't know what gives him the right to say this. Okay, maybe he is. This seems like pseudo-intellectual. He wants him to read Lenin, philosophy, and other essays. I don't know what's with this book recommendation. Just a virtuous
Number 8.
thing. Tribal Signal.
Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. Again, we have to remember what the left want ultimately is not good. The end destination point we don't agree with. I'm a realist, not a utopian for one. And I also am morally repelled by the notion of equality.
See?
As anybody on our side of the aisle is. We don't like, we see equality as unnatural. And actually undesirable.
I'm just a retard, obviously. Or autist, maybe. Fully explained. So let's get fully explained to us. Okay, Dev.
Where part of it was having a more clear
makes him seem Smash JT is fucking simp for, and it's so hard. So maybe that's why I didn't like this. So Dread Roberts, I don't know enough to speak on that.
People like Dread Roberts.
I think his argument here is good with Dread Roberts.
What is the spiritual difference between the First Ascendant and actual porn? I mean,
very nice screenshot there. Opinions on James Lindsay, very misguided, lost in the sauce. But I think if you leave his eccentric nature out there, there is some value. I think he just makes many faults and has many weird ideas of what is good. So we get into Melanie Mack. I want to go over woke right stuff. I don't think Smash JT is woke right. I think he's just a right-wing SJW. This is what this section of the video is going to be, a stream is going to be. Because I don't know about this Dread Roberts guy. Okay. Don't know. Would like to do research. Now I'm pulling a fucking tachyon blue there. But end of the day, V was pressured with the Melanie Mac. Why?
The next Goonergate
okay. John F. Trent, or as I refer to him, Rosary Warrior Trent, is definitely. And I don't even know why there's this Vosh rape. Oh, maybe this is where I did it. Here. I think this is actually.
I have been personally affected by sexual harassment and assault.
Here's the great clip.
Two instances. One I absolutely don't want to talk about, but the other one actually, like, I ended up pressing charges, and he got thrown out of court because.
Do you think it maybe speaks a little bit to the fact that we have a rape culture when we put 6 people in a room together to talk about Me Too, and the 4, when they're like, hey, who of you have experienced sexual assault? And the 4 women sit down and they've all been raped and they all can barely choke out a coherent sentence. Do we think this perhaps maybe slightly speaks to the fact that there's a problem? Like, Me Too has gone too far. False allegations are ruining people's lives. Okay, who among you have experienced sexual assault? And like every woman in the room starts crying. Like, almost every female friend I have has been the recipient.
And because he was like, I'm, part of like a certain religion.
Wait, are we being real?
And the police are basically just like, we can't because of cultural differences, which I don't feel like is such a good.
What? Bullshit! Are you fucking kidding me? Did she turn her fucking rape confession onto how the rape fugees, fucking Ahmed Muhammad, raped her, and the police were like, oh, we can't persecute brown people.
Okay. That's what I brought up earlier in the stream. That is hilarious. A lot of stuff. Yeah, Trent is definitely woke right, authoritarian right-wing person being subversive, and he's got a lot of YouTubers just spouting out his talking point. He's using all these YouTubers who want the slop content to just keep on flowing. The only good thing about Smash JT, despite how dumb he is frankly like this. This idea was in libertarian gobbledygook. See, even Trent doesn't like libertarianism. He's just a straight up fucking like Matt Walsh, theologue, pushing his fucking politics. Who even knows if he likes fucking what he reports on? Of course, I'm going to be against Trent, and he is subversive, but he's also a dumbass, so it makes me think. Savvy, I think she actually has good intent. I don't always agree with her, but from what I've seen and from what people say, she seems to have good intent. I just don't agree with her. And fucking Dev goes over autistically with this whole conversation. And there's the dipshit. The funny thing is, look who he sims for here.
Actually, when it comes to Trent, I was on Smash JT's panel a couple of weeks ago discussing this whole
Like
affair.
this.
And this one lady.
Call class. Cage. The bitch who came on to White Knight for Smash JT. That's just hilarious to me. Yeah. Hilarious that shit here. But what I want to get into is Melanie Mac as a thing. Because he's like, yeah, Trent seems to have inconsistent standards about Melanie Mac. Yes, she has consistent standards. So
it's just kind of sad to see from my point of view. The actual content of Melanie's arguments are very similar to Dread Roberts's, and we already spent a bunch of time analyzing them, so we don't have to go too deep on the repeats. Let's speedrun them real quick and save some time for the new stuff. Melanie says,
slutty games don't sell.
Like furry types, people, a bunch of people, even with like Overwatch fan art that draw really gross stuff. And so, yeah, are there some degenerate?
Okay, this is just too painful. Okay, Melanie Mac started off. I like research, and Melanie Mac is something I researched. Okay, she started off as a Ubisoft girl. Okay, she was in a couple of old stuff. She got married. You know, she was all for the rah-rah corporate image stuff. And I'm sure, given she was one of the sort of beautiful women that the woke mob sort of got out of business, and along with a couple of other factors, fucking Dev, stop with this fucking shit. Okay, fucking Gooner bitch ass. He's fucking out things. What the hell? I'm wondering if this is someone I saw just criticize Chud Logic. I'll have to check that out later, people. Sorry. Okay, sorry, I was sort of going. One thing I might disagree with Dev's Goonergate video on is the idea that Christians must be pro-censorship in order to live up to their values. You're probably right. There is probably some values you can say, like body's beautiful, okay? You can have a more naturalistic perspective on the sort of beauty of the human body. Look at the classical art of Greece. Well, that's probably a bad thing, but look at the sort of art from the... Yeah, there's probably arguments for that. Yeah. Yeah, I like to get some questions out there, but at the end of the day, Melanie Mack, I think she got a divorce. I think she just became a born-again Christian and just went with the crowd. I don't think she's incredibly smart. Shocker, but I think she really believes in the things. And Dev has to go on, yeah, she's wrong about Tomb Raider. From her subjective opinion, she's right. Okay, this is postmodernism, man, which is you're all a fan of. And V was pressured to attack Melanie, but he was also pressured to go after Grums, and he just swept for Grums. The stupidity of this. Don't want to go too deep into this because, oh God. Because I'll agree with Trent. I don't know about Dread Roberts, but Trent, definitely there. And his simping for fucking Smash JT, not a great look. Smash JT is an egotist, in my opinion. I think you see a lot of his stuff is me. A lot of his stuff comes off as egotistical. Everything's about him. And he's a right-wing SJWs, going after and canceling people and being a bitch about it and denying it. Except for when he is obviously called. And not having any standards. Him and Hypnotic, the cheerleader, simping for Grums. Okay, did I have anything else planned? There's plenty of stuff here, but I think I'm at 3 hours. Shit. Let me just go over a little bit of James Lindsay's sort of stuff before I finish up. There's plenty of stuff about Red Pill. I did want to go over this.
So it is coming to my attention that Bush is once again spreading lies and misinformation all over the place while making his trademark false accusation. Anything he does.
Low-hanging fruit. Vosh is bad. Should be fucking condemned to the pits of hell. And I need to check my guide. Check notes. 634. Should just put it here. So if you want to know base level understanding of
signs of disgust, you're probably dealing with a blue pill libertarian. And on the flip side, if they give a big thumbs up, then you're probably dealing with a red pill libertarian. Now, the reason for this is that Hoppe is one of the Austrian economists who has put quite a lot of work into the Mises Institute. Specifically, he's put a lot of work into explaining issues of right-wing theory and how it is necessary for libertarian theory in order for libertarianism to properly function. For example, explaining why freedom of association is very important to a libertarian society, and that laws that restrict the freedom of association, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, aren't actually a good thing, as they just give legal justifications for the state to enforce DEI policies. Yeah, for those of you who do not know, if you're...
I still don't know why he does the DEI policies. That wouldn't have had anything to do. DEI is a corporate effort to put diversity, basically black people, other things within media or their corporations for ESG points. How long has ESG been around? I think the push was probably 2014 to 2016. So it's a very recent thing that is sort of crumpling, luckily. Okay, I think with more colorblind approach to fairness, that it's fair to everyone equally. See, I'm very much against discriminating based on race or characteristics related with that. The best people for the best jobs, for the best roles. Women might not be the best people for game design because statistically, or to generalize, they're more people-oriented and detail-oriented why guys are more suited to things. That's a generalization. They're just more suited to certain tasks biologically, and women are more suited to other tasks. Artist roles probably go more to females. Probably 60-40 split with artists. There's different roles for different people. To generalize and not take into account different people's particular skills, broad brushing, never a good idea. But yeah,
you're kind of new to hearing what the libertarian right actually believes. We don't actually view civil rights as a good thing. And I've actually already made a video that shows why, and I'll link that at the end, because I know that that take tends to cause a little bit of confusion. But the TLDR of it is that if you already don't like the equity crap that we're seeing being pushed into the mainstream, then you actually already dislike the Civil Rights Act. You just have yet to find out why.
Oh, you don't like all the wokeness in media. You don't like the Civil Rights Act. Whoa, that's a giant fucking leap. That's the sort of, if this is what Hoppe teaches, I don't think I want to get to know his intellectual or pseudo-intellectual guy.
People into thinking that they are free, when in fact they are not. And the democratic system ultimately results in violations of people's property rights, so long as enough plebs can be convinced to vote for it, which is unfortunate.
Yes, get good, motherfuckers. Make a counter effort, okay? I just don't understand. It takes effort in a democracy to get things done. And you need to have a little bit of foresight to fucking, I mean, yeah, the woke people took everyone by surprise, okay? But now that we experienced it, should we really not be like, yeah, we're seeing this sort of movement grow. Why the fuck are we falling into this? And yeah, I said James Lindsay, a little bit of coverage for him. Just finish this kick shit in session all up. There might be some weird things in here, but yeah, grievance studies affair. And they pulled it, James Lindsay pulled it off on the woke, what he considers the woke right. The same thing he did to them. And James Lindsay doesn't understand cancel culture. Well, when you use such a very niche and weird definition of cancel culture and wokeness, of course he won't understand it. No one's going to understand it except for your diehard fans and maybe people who are also into this Hoppe guy. You have some John Delarose is definitely a woke right person, but that's should be clear. This is why the woke right people, they know their ideas aren't popular. Both of the John F. Trent and John Delarose, both right for right-wing Kotaku, in my opinion. Okay. You disagree with them, but if you're going along with their talking points, and even if you cut out the sort of religious rhetoric that they occasionally go mask off on, and this whole Brandon Sanderson stuff. And just for the record, I don't think heels versus babyfaces would be considered woke right either. I just think he's a guy going along with the trends, and that's where the trends take him. He's a funny, ranty guy, thumb man. Very intelligent? No. Funny rant man. Propped up by other people. That's a lot of people. But yeah, James Lindsay is out there. I think he's overcompensating for things and making mistakes here and there. End of the day, we can only do what we feel right. And let me end up with this particular point that just came up recently. When postmodern and critical. Yep. When did the definition of conservative change? Tachyon Blue was bringing up. People are calling me liberal when I've been conservative, pro-life Christian for my whole life, who read the Constitution in high school. And the people suddenly don't think I'm conservative enough aren't even Christians. Who knows? This person could be lying. This is the funnier thing. Woke right isn't going to be small. So funny stuff here. Apparently, this guy got the attention of Elon, got lots and lots of likes. Whoa, that's a lot. That is a lot of likes. James Lindsay is calling him woke right. Why is he calling him woke, right? Don't want to dwell on this too much. TikToker, not controlled by China at all, probably. Overton window is still screwed up, and leftists will call you a Republican if you... That is true. People want to just push people both ways. I was used to leftists doing it, pushing, but people on the right now are pushing people saying you're leftist. No, I just don't believe your bullshit. Plausible deniability. So got a little bit of clout, got a lot of things. Yeah, here it is. For being so smart, you're exceptionally bad. Just calling people stupid and man's what woke right splaining, should I say? Like dropping this. So here, gonna finish up with Elon.
You obviously cannot have people who, if they want to slaughter everyone in Israel, you got.
There's subtitling so you can read along. I think this is generally good. I do have problems with Elon, but he's self-admitted autistic. Probably his daughter's autistic who went trans. There is a problem with trans people being directed into transitioning because their autism misdiagnosed. Not going to go too deep into that in particular, but yep, hating Gaza from when they're kids. All good things, at least here. So this guy, who James Lindsay, I've never heard of him before. He's calling him woke right. For being smart, you're exceptionally bad at understanding this one issue. Kind of weird. What am I missing? Bam. A whole bunch of tasks. Okay. I'm trying to see. There's definitely someone who takes this and debunks it. Lindsay has it here. Okay, so claim one, purchase the seats about 90% or more of our current Congress. The AIPAC did not purchase seat. None of the whatever money goes into any politician pockets. AIPAC democracy funds ads so voters can decide who to vote for according to their worldview. So, yep, goes through, debunks it. Let's see, it's not that greatly thing. Let's see if he ever responds to it. Anything? Now let's go back to James Lindsay, because that he does respond to. Should have done that from the start, but I'm a dumbass most of the time. Especially this late in the stream. I don't have those stream muscles. Okay. So woke right isn't going to stay small for long, but you didn't call me a liar. You're definitely a liar. You just lie with curated truths. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Okay, it goes on, explain that. You say true factual things in a way that cause misleading implications, lie with statistics, as I said, lies, damn lies, take things out of context or do blah, blah, blah. Why am I not seeing this? I saw him. Well, you can read the thread for yourself at the end of the day. Did this get deleted? I'm pretty sure that he reposted someone. Let's just see. I might have to end with this. He quoted someone called the Awesome Jew with a debunking that I just went through. And I guess I lost it because I'm a dumbass and it doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I think on that note, I'm going to close out. Unless Lindsay also talked about, yeah, I mean, I don't think he's perfect. He definitely misses some stuff here and there. Like, let's just for Let's hear his definition. See, he just complicates everything he does. Okay, he needs to keep it simple, stupid. I think he keeps it a little bit too simple and brash on Twitter. He's a troll on Twitter. His focus on Christians and identity is it can be applied to anything. It's a critical theory. I think there's a certain element to it that's based off of academic agent and Sargon of Akkad recommending rules for radicals. You apply that to a lot of these people, and a lot of this makes sense. And the problem with laying this out like this is element that the left does all the time, moving the ball. That's about all I will say on that. I don't even remember his fucking use of that. I just use rightist as someone who's on the right and rightoid as a dumb person who just listens and believe what the rightist or the narrative that the right spins out. But yeah, I kept on saying I was gonna crash out a couple times, and I kept on reneging on that. Yeah, clip that, everyone. Before I say anything else on that, I am out. Bye-bye.